I'm going to call this meeting to order. If everyone could please stand for a moment of silent meditation or prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 2 on the agenda, public comment on any agenda items. We have anyone want to come forward? Alan?
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue. The residency thing that we're voting on tonight, your gentlemen are voting on tonight, I like the way it was presented at the last meeting that you guys had, but I do believe people should live in the township if they're going to get paid by the township. It's not hard. I mean, we have nice homes in Bensalem, and I think people should be here if they're going to work here.
Thank you.
That's my opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Seeing no one come forward. Number 3 on the agenda, approval of council minutes for meeting date August 27th, 2018, amended. Have any questions, any changes, additions, corrections?
I've got a couple changes. Item 4 in the meeting minutes. This is consideration of a resolution regarding the fire tax. In the first paragraph, about 2/3 of the way down, it says, Sloan asked if we are authorized to increase the tax without placing questions on the ballot. And then I'd like to cross out, and Paizo said yes, because he did not say yes. He just explained that in 2003, voters approved the increase. And then I'd like another addition. If Mr. Paizo agrees, I would like to make an addition that says, Sloan asked if that was because the total is already above 3 mils, it would have to go on the ballot, and Paizo said yes. And I've gone back and I've watched the tape to confirm that that's how it went down. And I just wanted to see, Mr. Paizo, if you agree with that.
My recollection and my review of what we discussed, Mr. Sloan, and I don't know if we're necessarily not both saying the same thing, that I explained that the township had twice put the question on the ballot, both in the 90s to go to 5 mils and again in 2003 to go to 7 mils, and that the township believes that the question has to go on the ballot again today, which I believe these minutes accurately reflect.
Well,
I do believe that you asked that if it had to go on the ballot because the total is already above 3 mils, and that I explained that yes, the township had previously approved for it to go above 3 mils, and that as a result of the change in the adjustment of what constitutes a mill by the county in 2005 or whatever it is, that that had changed what constitutes a mill.
that discussion never came up in that meeting.
No, I'm quite certain that we, again, that I said that we believe the question has to be put on the ballot because the county had changed what the value of a mill is. I'm quite certain I said that.
I mean, we can push this out one more meeting and get this right, and maybe just get a transcript instead of, this summary that clearly is misinterpreting it.
Well, I don't know that what we're going back and forth on is material. I'm certainly willing to say that you asked if it had to go on the ballot because it was above 3 mils, and I said yes. But I
Yeah.
said that because, again,
Oh, I understand that. That's-
it had been approved at an amount greater than 3 mils. The county, not the township, did an adjustment that changed what the value of a mill is. And as a result, we still believe that we had to treat it at the value that we had established when the voters voted twice prior to go above 3.
I understand. I don't think that was made clear at that meeting. However, you did agree that because we had previously raised it above 3 mils, that's why it was necessary
Yes.
to go on the ballot.
That was
And
my-
that's all I wanted this to
Okay.
reflect.
So if you're agreeable, rather than continue to kick this can down the road,
Yeah.
approve the minutes, and I'll work with Ms. Terlecki on that language, and you and I can hammer it out if there's any.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that the
questions.
minutes accurately reflect the discussion.
Not a question, not a problem.
Because there was a Courier Times article afterwards who asked a third-party expert attorney in the same thing, and he pretty much said the same thing, that on the side of being concerned, cautious,
Yeah.
Right.
you should have it go on the ballot, because it
Right.
is something that's...
The State Association of Township
It wasn't clear.
Supervisors has looked at this, the County Board of Elections has looked at it, the county solicitor has looked at it, everybody, and the question is in fact on the ballot. So
Yep.
I think
The
everybody's in
Courier agreed
agreement
that
that
it should be on the ballot.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the minutes accurately reflect the discussion, that's all.
that's fine.
That was the only correction I had.
Do we have any other additions or corrections?
No, but I think I'm going to find somebody going to want, I think we're going to find someone who's going to want to do the minutes. Seriously.
Do we have any other additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with an amendment to correct this discussion, reflecting that I had asked if we had to put the ballot on the question because the township had previously raised the fire tax to above 3 mils.
I'll second it.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Mr. Paizo, is there anything off the agenda or any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Item number 5 on the agenda, which is what was understood to be an intermunicipal transfer of a liquor license. Subsequent to the application being submitted to the township, following review of the same, it was determined that the liquor license that was the subject of the application is not a restaurant license, which would be required to have township approval of an intermunicipal transfer, but rather is a distributor's license. A distributor license, beer distributor license, is not subject to the intermunicipal transfer requirements because those are issued countywide and the quotas are set countywide versus restaurants and taverns, which are set by municipalities. Each municipality has a quota. Therefore, having discovered that, having discussed it with the attorney for the applicant, it was agreed that the matter is not ripe for consideration by this board, and therefore it is off of your agenda for tonight. So there's really nothing for you to do. The request for the transfer has been withdrawn, not requiring the township's approval for the same.
Now, if they bring this license in, do they have to come in front of this board or to zoning to be able to put this somewhere in Bensalem?
Strictly as to whether that license can come into Bensalem, the answer is no. If it is a license which is already somewhere else in Bucks County and it's being moved from one location to another, and I believe that's the case here, this is coming from Dublin up county and coming into Bensalem, the law does not require, nor does it afford the township the opportunity to hold a hearing on whether you are agreeable to that happening. You can certainly, I believe, as the host municipality, if council believes it necessary, could weigh in on the liquor license application before the LCB and we could always send a letter or something to the LCB saying, to the extent anyone in Harrisburg cares, we're not crazy about another beer distributor license coming into the township. I assume we have the ability to do that as we would for, any other license, but the intermunicipal transfer of the restaurant and tavern licenses, the law specifically gives the township the ability to say, yes, we are agreeable to this, or no, we are not.
The question I'm asking is if they bring this in, and let's say they want to go on Route 13 in a smoke shop, could they just do that, or do they have to have an approval of the township, or do they have to go to the zoning hearing board? That's what I'm asking, not whether they can bring it here or not.
It would, and I answered your question strictly within the four corners of the license itself. Any of the other issues would apply, as they would to any property in the township. Is the property zoned for selling beer? If it is, then the fact that a liquor license is now going to go to that property would not have to come to the township. On the other hand, if the property isn't so zoned, it would either have to be rezoned or go to the zoning hearing board for a use variance.
Very good, thank you.
But no, there's no special relief required if the property is zoned for that use.
Yeah, Joe, just to clarify, what would be the difference when we voted on, for instance, the liquor license to go into the, I believe it was a Mexican-style restaurant across from the Chamonix Mall, and the liquor license to go into the Acme, and the liquor license to go into the Giant? What's the difference between, we had to vote on that because it was coming outside the township? So you're saying because it's a restaurant
Yes.
license?
Yes, the licenses which are being utilized by Giant and Acme and other supermarkets are retail licenses, not distributor licenses. So in order for the Acme or the Giant to be able to sell beer, they've had to establish within their store, in some fashion,
restaurants.
a restaurant. I'm sure a lot of people were there this past Sunday watching the Eagles game, but
I wouldn't go that far, but
yeah, no, but to the extent that in order to be able to sell the beer or wine on a takeout basis, the Giant or the Acme has to set up tables and has to have an area where you can purchase food to be eaten on premises in order to also sell the beer and wine for takeout. So that's how those licenses apply. And since they are restaurant licenses as opposed to beer distributor licenses, if they're coming into Bensalem from Bristol or Dublin or Quakertown or wherever, there has to be a hearing in front of you and you have to approve it.
But as far as this particular one, the only thing we could do is protest to the liquor board or something. Other than that,
I think that's
if
pretty
they
much
want to
it.
have one there, this type of license, they can just do it.
I believe so.
You're in their jurisdiction.
Okay. I thought there
But
was.
yeah, you can think about when your anniversary's coming up, where you want to take your.
Yeah, I'm going to go watch the Eagles at the Acme this week.
Okay, so do we need to, are they pulling it? Is that what's?
It has in your packets, I believe, is a copy of an October 2nd letter from the attorney for, I think it's October 2nd, for the attorney representing the property owner, advising that we're now all in agreement that it's not needing township approval, and therefore they've withdrawn the pending request for the intermunicipal transfer. So no further action is required by the township.
Okay, do you have anything else?
That, I believe, is everything that I'm aware of. Item 9, when you get to it, which is the planning module for Broken Goblet, we still haven't received that paperwork, so we'll be asking you to table that, but nothing else being withdrawn tonight.
Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda, consideration of ordinance regarding residency requirements for township employees. Who's handling that?
Well, I'll be happy to. So this item, as council will recall, is a matter that's been kicked around for a few months now. And at your last meeting, having proposed to the council a number of potential variations for an amendment to the current township residency requirements. A majority of the council gave direction that the version which has been advertised for this evening for your consideration is the version of a potential amendment to the residency requirement the council would like to consider. By way of background, for those who may not be familiar or who may not recall, the township currently has a residency requirement that's in place that applies to all employees of the township, save for those who were grandfathered by having worked for the township before the residency requirement was put in place a number of years ago, and save for those employees of the township who may be covered by a collective bargaining agreement that allows for them to reside a certain distance outside of the township. The ordinance that is before you for consideration this evening would continue the requirement that township directors would have to live within the township within 6 months of their hire, and this would apply to any directors who were hired after January 1 of 1994. The only substantive change to this language from what is currently in the township code would be that it now formalizes what has always been understood, that a waiver request from the mayor could be requested of council, and that the council would act upon it within 30 days of submission of that waiver request. The material change in the policy would be that for all employees who are not directors of the township would be required to reside in the township for a period of 5 years, those 5 years beginning from 6 months after the date of hire. And they would have to continue to live in the township for 5 years from the date of hire. Thereafter, that fifth year anniversary of their employment, employees would then have the option, if they so choose, to move outside of the boundaries of the township in any direction within a 12-mile radius of the township. And I shouldn't say 12-mile radius, because radius might suggest drawing a circle. The way it's written and the way it's always been applied is that you go 12 miles from the boundaries of the township. So, if the township boundary goes like this, you're measuring, you're measuring not from the middle of the township, but from the boundary lines.
Closest boundary line.
This would again not apply to any employee who is covered by a conflicting language of a collective bargaining agreement. I believe at this point the language would either be consistent with the collective bargaining agreements or would afford an employee a greater opportunity to live outside the township perhaps than their current collective bargaining agreements do. So I would expect that in some time in the future, and again, I'm not the township's labor attorney, but the collective bargaining agreements will probably be modified to reflect this change if it's adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo. Do we have any questions on the ordinance? Any comments?
I just want to thank everybody for working together to get this up to a vote tonight. I know this has been something we've been kicking around for the past 8 months, so thank you.
And my comment would be, as I had said earlier on when we discussed this, I honestly, and I don't know because I'm not an attorney, but I question the constitutionality of having someone live where they work as opposed to allowing them to live wherever they like to live and work where they would like to work. That's my opinion. But I have no problem with this coming before us and voting on this tonight.
Yeah, in general, I'm okay with the compromise here, and I would think that if someone lived in the township for 5 years, in most cases, they'll want to continue to live in the township. So I think it's going to be an isolated incident where people are going to want to leave the township after 5 years, but I understand that there may be personal and family issues and relationship issues and children issues that might require someone to, move a short distance from the township, and if they're here 5 years, I'm perfectly fine with it, so that's why I'm willing to go along with this compromise.
And the other comment I'd like to make is that I appreciate that this does kind of level the playing field for township employees, kind of putting everyone on the same page as far as the collective bargaining agreements go. So I appreciate that.
My comment on this is this ordinance was, I'm sure when it was put in, is to this department's that's asking for this and is getting this, his job is to service this township in a matter of disasters, snowstorms, things of that nature. Taxpayers pay the tax money to get those services and have those services. My concern is people are out, we get a freak storm, people can't get into work, the people of Bensalem will now be in trouble because they won't be able to move because we won't have people to perform the services that they were hired to do, and they knew at the time they took the job that they had to live here. That's just my comment on what this is. Any other comments? If not, I'm going to go to the audience. Anyone in the audience have anything for or against this ordinance?
We need to go to the audience again.
Seeing no one come forward, the vote would be in order.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve this resolution as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstentions? 0410. Number 6 on the agenda, consideration of a preliminary and final land development plan, applicant Republic Bank, 2961 Mechanicsville Road, proposed use bank, zoning classification GC General Commercial, tax parcel 2-37-29, 2-37-30, 2-37-31.
Joe, is this a preliminary or final?
I don't think it can be.
Recall we were here a few months ago, and at that time, the council voted to rezone one of the 3 parcels to be intended use for the bank location. Since that time, we've been to the zoning hearing board, and we received relief from a setback requirement. That relief was granted the night of the hearing, and after that, we attended the Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended preliminary approval of the project. I can note that the agenda for tonight shows that we are on for preliminary and final approval. We would very much like preliminary and final approval, but I am not certain that that's the agenda is correct in that regard. We do have all of the township professional letters, and our answers to all of the comments, and all of them will comply. And so we think that the plans are ready now to submit in final form and are ready to be approved. So if you'd like to entertain the preliminary and final approval tonight, we have our engineer here, and he can speak to any questions that you have about the modifications to the plan for the final set. Otherwise, we have, like I said tonight, our engineer, and we also have our planner that can answer any questions. The plans that you see here before you tonight are identical to the plans that we presented when we were here requesting a rezone of that 3rd parcel. They haven't changed at all. With that, I'd like to ask our engineer to. Sorry. Go ahead.
Since it's on the application here as preliminary. On our sheet, it's preliminary and final. They went from the planning for preliminary.
I believe that we can make the determination at the end of the hearing, but based on the representations of council, And based on my review of the review letter, I believe that if council wants to grant preliminary and final this evening, the plan would be appropriate for that. And normally what you would do would condition that upon them paying the fees for final approval, which haven't otherwise been paid to the township. But if doing that, and you otherwise believe that the plan is good to go, council can certainly this evening grant preliminary and final.
And to speak to that, if we are entertaining the idea of preliminary and final tonight, there would be, I believe, 2 waivers that we would have to request in that regard. One would be a waiver to allow us to present as preliminary and final, and so I'd like to request that waiver.
Let's go through the letter from Ron Gans first, and then we can, when you get to the waiver part of it, or whatever, you can bring that up later. Let's go through the letter you have from Ron Gans.
Sure, thank you. If it's all right, then I'll ask Chris Reese, our site engineer, to take over and go through the plans with you.
Have any of your witnesses, have all your witnesses sworn in? Do you have any other witnesses that are going to?
No, our planner, yes.
So we'll have them sworn in?
Yeah, come on up. Why don't you guys get them here?
Raise your hand, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or you do so?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chris, why don't you step up and go through the site plan and just hit on the major topic.
Okay, just a brief overview of the site plan. It's located at the corner of Mechanicsville and Street Road. Proposed Republic Bank, after consolidation of the 3 lots that are there, the property will be 1.26 acres. It's located in the general commercial zoning district. Since it's located at the corner of 2 PennDOT, state roads, we will need to get PennDOT permits for each of the driveways at that intersection. The proposed bank is approximately 3,575 square feet. We have parking areas, drive-through lanes, 3 drive-through lanes, and a pass-through lane, access around the site. And we have 27 parking spaces for the bank. And we are we'll be proposing a landscape plan showing adequate buffering and screening, especially along the 2 residential properties next to the site. We did get a letter from Ron, and I have a copy here. So I'll go through that letter. And first off, for zoning, a variance was received from the setback.
And that was at the September meeting of the zoning hearing board,
September
correct?
12th, 2018 hearing, correct. All right. Going to land development comments, the record plan shall include a lot consolidation key plan. So we will provide a key plan on the record plan and a lot consolidation plan to consolidate the 3 lots. Ron comments to extend the residential boundary line along the common line of 2 tax parcels there, 23728 and 23729, and that is something we will comply. Number 3, the driveway crosswalk should use the international striping pattern that is used in parking lot crossings, and again, we will comply with that. Existing features plan indicates sanitary sewer easements straddling the 3 common sides of the existing parcels. 2 of the easements include a sanitary sewer main, which will be replaced with a relocated easement and sewer main. And we will work with the sewer authority to revise those easements, get them recorded, and abandon the easements that are no longer needed or in use. Number 5 regards a pipe conflict with the sanitary sewer and proposed stormwater sewer system. And again, all pipe conflicts will be resolved, so we will comply with that. We will provide spot elevations. This is comment 6 on the grading and drainage plan. Number 7, the subsurface detention system detail on sheet 8 is not in agreement with the plan view, and we will comply with that. Number 8, deferring to the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority regarding all sanitary sewer construction details and easements. Again, we will comply. We have reached out to them to start the discussions and the permitting with them. Number 9, the Bucks County Conservation District for erosion and sediment controls, we will comply. Number 10 was providing additional plans, including landscaping, lighting, vehicle circulation, and stormwater management. And again, we will comply with all of those comments. Letter E, again, is commenting on completing the stormwater management review when the final stormwater management plan has been provided. So we will comply with that. Miscellaneous comments regarding certifications referring to the instrument number, again, we will comply. Number 2, we will comply with that comment to make the detail sheets, providing all the details that are needed on the plan. And then number 3 is acknowledging a sign permit application will be made following the final plan approval.
Do you have any questions from the board at this time?
Okay, so you said the one, they're all complies. Okay, so you said the one waiver would be that if we consider it to be partial and final, what's the other waiver?
The one would be a landscape waiver. And
So is that something Ron didn't bring up, or?
Well, I can speak to that. We have the buffer area next to our neighbor that we discussed in great detail during the rezone application and also with the Planning Commission. We've offered throughout that process to modify the plantings in that buffer, to increase the plantings, really at the request of our neighbor and in accordance with what the township allows us to do in there. And so we anticipated that as we finalize the plans, if our neighbor is requesting something, if we agree to something and the township engineer, traffic engineer agree to that, those changes may be outside of what the ordinance requires. And in the same way, as we go through the street trees that we're showing in some of those issues, we may have issues with the types of plantings, the distance between the plantings that would come up as we finalize that landscape plan. So what we would be asking for is a waiver of those requirements to allow us to make the modifications that we've discussed in the past. And if in any case we are failing to plant the required number of plants or the required size of plants, that in exchange for that waiver or as part of that waiver, we would offer a fee in lieu of anything that we haven't planted, or that we would pay to have those plants planted somewhere else in the township at the township engineer or the township council's direction. And I think that would be the only 2 waivers. Changes in the landscaping, and that would be, I think we would be suggesting that would be at the discretion of the township engineer in conjunction with his direct dealings with council, and the waiver to allow preliminary and final to be granted at the same time.
I guess.
You asked the question.
Okay,
You
yeah.
gave the answer.
Now, are they, I don't want to, Ron, if they do more than is necessary, do you need a waiver for that? It's only if they do less and maybe more in another area, is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's fine, okay.
Are you in agreement with what they want to do, Mr. Gans?
Okay, you're okay.
Thank you.
I believe what's being anticipated is perhaps in order to achieve what the neighboring property owner is looking for in the way of
Yeah.
buffering, it may require planting. The ordinance may call for a species of tree, and
He doesn't
what
want that
what the neighboring property owner is looking for is something perhaps that's larger or fuller or arborvitae in addition. So to the extent that we may not be following the letter of the ordinance, you're asking for the ability to do that with the goal to be to satisfy the township's requirements, but also to provide as full a buffer as we can for the neighboring property owner, correct?
That's exactly correct, yes.
And with the
And Mr. Gans
township
said he's-
engineer's approval?
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Sure.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Mr. Tagmanian?
Can you explain to me the issue with the zoning variance, how it was improperly measured, and then also point at where that lies, please?
Yeah, Chris, could you do the pointing while I do the explaining? So there is a 20-foot buffer that is required on that, it's both a side yard and a rear yard. And then we had been reading throughout the process the 75-foot buffer setback, or sorry, the 75-foot building setback as also being calculated from that property line, so that we would have a building no closer than 75 feet from the property line, and within that, a buffer of 20 feet. And in fact, we were showing, you'll see on Mechanicsville Road, the buffer is closer to 80 feet outside of that. Your township engineer, in the letter that we received, cited those two things as cumulative rather than combined, so that the building setback requirement was to be calculated from the inside of the buffer rather than from the property line. So we went to the zoning hearing board. We requested both an interpretation or a variance. And rather than dealing with the interpretation, the zoning hearing board just granted a variance. And I think that Chris just was able to show you that there's a dotted line that goes through the corner of the building. And that's essentially the line that line is 95 feet from that rear property. And I think the building encroaches into that approximately 11 to 12 feet. It doesn't affect the same buffer that we were showing, this screen buffer, has not been altered since we were here for the rezone, and it will not be altered. It was just a question of the calculation of that, of the building setback.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question or two, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Let me get back where I was here. The, on D10, we were talking about the following information must be provided with the final plan application. You're in compliance with that, but you have not provided us with a storm management plan, is that correct? Stormwater management?
Correct, we have not provided the details of the stormwater management plan yet.
So how do we know it's going to work?
Or explain we're using underground basin. We know the impervious coverage and we can calculate. You've done it
Right, we've done the calculations. We do show a conceptual plan on the plans that we had. We're using underground detention, and then the outfall from that underground detention was going to come out to the existing inlet system on Street Road. So we're going to tie into PennDOT. And we would comply with the township requirements as far as stormwater management. We're proposing infiltration to meet both the DEP requirements and the township requirements.
the property appropriately so we're able to meet the infiltration requirements?
Correct, yeah. Where we tested for the infiltration in the detention basin, we did have percolation in there, so we can provide infiltration in that basin to meet the requirements.
So you will comply with the request of our township engineer?
Correct.
Whatever they are. Ron, you good with that?
Yes, they'll also have to comply with PennDOT because they're connected to their system.
Right, but you're still our
Township
guy.
engineer, Penn.
We will want to see all those perk tests and all the other calculations.
All right, I have a letter from the Bucks County Planning Commission, but it's dated August 1st. I'm assuming you have already complied with some of those things, such as the landscape plan?
Yep, a lot of those-
That's what we're just talking about?
Yes.
Okay. How about on that same letter, section number 2, street road access? I'll read from you what it says there. If the township wishes to permit access to the site from a westbound street road, the applicant should investigate the installation of a dedicated left turn lane on westbound street road.
On Street Road, we were proposing a right in and right out only. So anyone exiting the bank won't be able to make a left. And that was a request from the Planning Commission as well.
Yeah, that's better, yeah.
So it would be a right in, right out.
I think when the County Planning Commission first saw the plans, we were showing that as a full access driveway. As we went through the process with you for the rezone and the Planning Commission a few times, we came to the determination that PennDOT was likely not going to allow that anyway. You didn't want to see it, so we changed that to a right in, right out only. The Planning Commission recommended when we were here the last time that we possibly put in a pork chop to prevent people from trying to make the left, and we're agreeable to that as long as it's authorized by PennDOT. We anticipate PennDOT would probably make that requirement.
All right, and let me keep on going here then, if I may. Is it 19 trees total? Is that what you're putting in? Is that what it is? Site trees, 19? It's,
That's our concept plan, but the idea was that could change depending on what we do in that buffer, if we change the species of trees or we change any of the locations. We also will have an issue of, it'll be looked at whether or not we meet the sight lines, sight triangles, and whether or not PennDOT allows any of those proposed plantings within those triangles. And that's why we asked for, another reason why we asked for that waiver. If PennDOT requires us to move something out of there, we may have trees that are not the appropriate distance from each other, or may have moved to another area on the site.
Okay, and so then that will be in compliance with our township engineer also?
Exactly.
Okay, and then you haven't applied for the storage facility planning module 537 yet, is that correct?
Partially, we did reach out to DEP and we sent them the forms. And because we're going, right now there's 3 lots there that have 3 EDUs, and the bank will have 1 EDU. We will be able to get an exemption from planning modules, so we'll be following up with that and proceeding in that direction.
I would agree. I don't anticipate sewer capacity being an issue for this property.
We're actually decreasing sewer flows based on the existing conditions. So
Okay, that's it, sir.
Just to touch on what Mr. Kisselbeck had brought up, the pork chop that you have planned there at the exit of, off of Street Road, there was a letter also from, I believe, our police department that had expressed concern about the fact that the no left turn sign wouldn't prevent individuals from making that left. And I guess, how high is that pork chop? Do you foresee the fact that that pork chop, because from what I understand, they're pretty low and you could still drive over it. And do you foresee that still being an issue where people could very well make that left? And is there any alternative to try to prevent people from actually making the left?
Well, I think that the pork chop would be governed by PennDOT standards. I don't know whether, Chris, would it be a mountable curb, or are we talking about a?
it's usually a mountable curb, I think, and that'll be approved by PennDOT. We can see what PennDOT will allow if they can, but a lot of times they look to have the mountable curb so emergency vehicles could access that if needed.
I mean, it would be, there, other than a barrier between the north and south, or east and west? Well, east and westbound lanes, other than a barrier between them that absolutely prevents it. The pork chop is about the most that you can do, the sign and the pork chop. I mean, if the sign is there and somebody has to go out to the right and then mount that pork chop and go over, they're just breaking the law in a blatant fashion.
I get it, but it happens.
Well, we can work, I know that as we work through the highway occupancy permit process, your township engineer and traffic engineer would be working with them along with us, and we would be agreeable to as much control, physical control, to prevent that as PennDOT will allow. So if they would allow us to make it a non-mountable curb, a straight edge curb, I think we would be agreeable to that.
Based on that thought and what Ed had just said also, I don't know if PennDOT would allow that, but I agree with what he's saying, and I had given that the same thought, but I don't think it would be safe to do that in case someone tried to break the law, as you just said. We can't have them crashing into things and such. But what you had just mentioned kind of makes sense. Is, have you ever seen, they have like 4-foot little post, plastic post in the middle of Street Road?
Oh, yeah.
Where you cannot make that turn in there. That would be, to me, something that would really be, help resolve that problem right there. So that's something that, I don't know, we would request that, or you would request that, or put
Well, yeah, I
that
think
on
we
your-
both could, because the township will be involved. They'll be notified when PennDOT's reviewing this. If PennDOT wants to meet on it, we'll be happy. And if PennDOT and the township professionals are agreeable to that, so are we. Whatever can be done to stop people from making that illegal movement, we will be fine with.
Well, when you're meeting, try to keep that in mind as far as a possibility suggestion. I think
Okay,
that
I
would work
will.
well.
Do you have any other questions at this time? Ron, did you see any of the stormwater plans that are quoting some numbers and things they have? Did they give you anything on that?
No, I've seen nothing on the actual design. They'll have to provide the post-construction stormwater management plan, which will include all the testing that they've done and where they plan to drain the water out to.
So, and I think we mentioned before that we will, we've seen them, those calculations. We believe our plan will work, but we would be leaving it as a condition that if we do not comply fully with the township engineer's review, then of course the approvals would be
Understood, but if you have numbers and calculations, they should have been provided so that we had something to look at. You're asking us to make it, make it a condition of. To us, it would have been nice to see the numbers that you do have. You're quoting them, so you have to have them, so why didn't you give them to us? That's my question.
Sure. I apologize that you don't have them.
Any other questions? Okay. Anybody in the audience have anything for or against this project?
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue. At the last meeting that we had with these gentlemen, I had made a suggestion for a slowdown lane on East Street Road. I don't see anything changed with that. I wouldn't even mind seeing, in lieu of sidewalks, put a slowdown lane, because the traffic through there is, any time of day, really is unbelievable. I mean, you're going to be blocking people trying to make right turns. If somebody wants to come out, it's just, I don't think the driveway's wide enough, to be honest with you, but that's just my opinion. On Street Road, the one coming off of Street Road, and definitely no left-hand turn lanes. I mean, you got to find a way not to have that happen, because it happens in all the places in Bensalem that have these pork chops. It is happening today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, so.
Most people are good, but there's a lot that just don't.
There's a lot.
They just want to make the left-hand
They
turn.
want to do what they want to do, and no one's stopping them, so they're
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Thank you.
That's the only problem I have with this, is that they should have a slowdown lane.
Thank you, sir. Okay, can you give your name and address for the record, please?
Bill McHale, 2925 Mechanicsville Road. I'm the neighbor on Mechanicsville. Stormwater runoff is important, especially this year. We had a lot of rain. I got couple soft spots, but I know what I have. I hope I don't have anything more. And sewage and all that kind of stuff, which I don't understand. I respectfully take your opinion on that. And this picture that they have up here with the 7 cars, what time of day was that taken? Sunday morning, maybe? It looks very placid, but this afternoon when I came home from work at 5 o'clock, I sat 2 lights at Mechanicsville, took my left to go towards Philadelphia, towards my house, and traffic was backed up, and then I had to wait until somebody let me go and take a left into my driveway. And that's going to happen again. That's another problem. They're really putting 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. I'm still against it. But that's all. I'm trusting you guys to take care of myself, and that's why I'm here. I'm trying to keep an eye on it. I'm concerned.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Barbara Zeidler, 1108 Ohio Avenue. I guess, number one, I don't understand the need for a third bank on that corner. There's already 2 banks at that intersection. But one of my concerns is, nearly 48 years ago, I was almost killed at that intersection with my children in the car with me. I know what that intersection is like, and believe me, there's a lot more traffic there now than there was 48 years ago. I think Mr. Mayor is probably the only one around long enough to remember that, but my concern, I use that intersection at probably a half a dozen times a week at least. And I have also shopped in that shopping center right across the street on the other side of Mechanicsville. Try to get out of that shopping center and make a left onto Mechanicsville on a Friday evening or a Saturday, and it's almost an impossibility. I have many times made a right, gone down and found a place to turn around and come back up. And what I'm seeing is right turn only in and out on Street Road, which means if you want to go west on Street Road, you're going to have to come out the Mechanicsville driveway. If you want to go I guess that would be south on Mechanicsville, you're going to have to use that driveway. You're just throwing more traffic onto Mechanicsville. Now, it looks very nice that there's a lot of trees planted along there, but how long do you think it's going to be before somebody decides, oh, we need to widen Mechanicsville Road now and take that row of trees out in order to do that? As usual, things get built and then we discover the roads won't handle the extra traffic and then the roads get widened. And I just don't think there's enough forethought here as to, do we really need more commercial traffic at that intersection? It's probably second to the Knights Road intersection as far as the headache that intersection has now, with that one corner not being commercial. And as I said, there's already 2 banks right there, and you go a couple hundred feet down the road, there's a Univest down right in front of where the Chili's restaurant is. How many banks do we need, and at what cost, as far as the traffic, the inconvenience to the people who live, work, and shop here? It is just getting totally out of hand as far as I'm concerned. The last thing we need is to take down houses and put in more concrete.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this project?
Hi, my name is Linda Snyder. I'm at 1048 Orchid Avenue, that's spelled like the flower, in Bensalem. And I'm also concerned about the traffic flow because Knights Road got more lanes than this tiny little street of Mechanicsville, and it's heavily used, I think, to cut through. And I'm going to say that because I cut through Mechanicsville Road to avoid the congestion at Knights Road. I'll go down Mechanicsville Road onto, I guess that's Brown Avenue, up to Knights Road, because that intersection is just so horrid. And now this little intersection, I agree with the last woman that spoke. When you come out of that shopping center and try to make a left, that's insanity and quite dangerous. So we must make a right, go down. You might have to come all the way back around the neighborhood to go further up west on Street Road. If it's a day for me of running errands and I'm hitting there and some other places, it's extremely congested. And I understand that the bank is probably already underway and it's going to happen, but I just think that some major engineer work, I guess, and thought put into I really like what you said about the barriers on Street Road so people can't make a left. Because when people really put everybody else in danger when they do that, but there's always somebody that's going to make a left to go west on Street Road. And there's always that somebody who's going to come out of that little shopping center and try to make a left back to Street Road when somebody's exiting the bank, and that's going to be heavy. I'm concerned about how it's going to work. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Do we have anyone else to come forward? Public portion is now closed. I'm going to make my comment, the same comment that I made at the rezoning. I'm the one councilman that lives in the districts where this is. Knights Road, Mechanicsville, Unionville Road are 3 of the worst major intersections in the state of Pennsylvania. Getting around through those roads, Mechanicsville Road, Knights Road, Street Road, it's already a nightmare. Putting this traffic out on that road, it is just not fair to the residents that live in the area. You have Armstrong School that's going to be building a gigantic thing of wanting to come in for retail stuff. There's no reason this bank couldn't go in that facility. Why on this corner where it's going to make it so dangerous for the people, the buses that drive in this township, getting the kids from the residents in Stanwood to schools? I mean, it's just to the point where we're putting things to meet up with the competitors that are across the street. And there's really no reason for that. If you're going to do it, you do it and make it safe for the community, not that sometimes is the competitive nature of things. If there's somewhere else it could go, it's my thought that you should go there and not jeopardize the people, the children in that neighborhood. And that's my majorly concern. It always is traffic safety, safety for the community, safety for the residents. And I just think that this is just overkill for a corner when there's other places this bank could have gone. So that's my comment. Do we have anything, any other questions or anything from the board?
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at you, and I agree with what you're saying in theory, but in practicality, I think this is a good fit for this corner. I think that right now, there's a business there, a profession that does make left-hand turns out of the building and makes it onto Street Road, which is the dental office. I don't, it's going to probably increase some traffic. I don't think it's going to be so detrimental to the community that it's going to have to pay the price to.
Move down to my community, or let's put it in your community. And
I
let's
live
see
in
what
Bensalem,
happens.
Joe.
Yeah,
I live
Ed-
in Bensalem.
Ed, you don't live in this district. You don't live in this area. I do.
You live down on Humeville Road, down in Eddington is where you live. That's
Street Road,
further
Ed.
down.
Street Road, Ed.
I'm up and down Street Road too, Joe.
It's Street Road, Ed. I live there. So I'm just saying to you.
And I'm
it
making
makes a
my
difference.
comments, and I didn't interrupt you when you were making yours.
Okay. Go ahead, finish your comments,
Well,
Ed.
the comment is, I live in Bensalem, and I'm concerned as you are about Bensalem, and anyone on this dais is as concerned with everyone in Bensalem also. So don't single out yourself as being the
I'm
only,
not singling out me. I'm singling out the people that live there.
okay.
So not me. It's
You're
people
singling
living.
out yourself as the righteous individual that's up here protecting everyone in Bensalem, and we're just scantily just considering this and not taking that into consideration, which we really are, and we do.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Kisselbeck?
Yeah, and I have the fact that
Go right
I
ahead.
believe I think it's a good fit for this area. The fact that there is a bank, could it be something else? Could it? But that's not for us to decide. Does it fit within the scheme of the process that's going through? Yes, it does. That's my decision. That's my comments.
Do we have any other
Yeah,
questions or comments?
My comment would be is, in a perfect world, it would be better to be nothing.
What is he
But,
doing?
it's already a house that's not in tremendous condition, that is zoned commercial, and it's a dentist office who, the dentist is actually somewhat tragically passed away at a younger age, younger adult anyway. And, so the dentist office could be taken over by another business. And the corner property could be taken over by another business, and there could be a tobacco store within there, or a tattoo place, or another place. The traffic situation would still be similar or worse, and we would have worse, well, no such word as worse, I wouldn't say that. But anyway, we would have a worse situation with two not as quality businesses. I think this applicant has done everything they can to try to make this the best it could be. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's going to be good for that, for the area compared to what it could be, and so I'm okay with it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo a little bit about what Mr. Knoll said. This is already zone commercial. Something else could go in there that would potentially have much worse traffic patterns than what the bank is proposing. Typically, what we've seen when we discussed this last time at the rezoning was that this is one of the least impacts to traffic out of the options that could go into this area for what it's zoned. I think that the improvements that they're making as far as the driveways will help. I understand that this is a bad intersection, and anything that we can do to make it safer, for instance, I like Mr. Kisselbeck's idea of those barriers in the middle of Street Road. I think that would help a lot. The pork chop on, making it a right in, right out on Street Road, I think that helps a lot. Ultimately, we're taking an area of Street Road which may have been residential a long time ago, but now that whole corridor is zoned commercial, and we have to find a way to make that work in this community. I think this is one of the ways that we can make it work, and no, it's not perfect, but I think it's one of the least impactful of all the options that could go in there.
Just to share some of the same sentiments as some of my other board members. It's a low footprint building. I do see other commercial properties along Street Road, I do recognize the traffic concerns, but I do believe the developer has been flexible with us as far as meeting any requirements that we have had, in addition to putting some of the ideas together that we had presented this evening. I did bring up the same concern about there being several banks at our prior meeting, but what else could very well go there, I don't know. And I think it's going to help this corner to some extent, to Mr. Knowles' point, where you have a dilapidated home there, and we're also then taking up another commercial piece of property. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Pazzo, do you have anything?
As to where we stand from a procedural posture with the application, again, if council is of a mind to proceed with preliminary and final approval of the plan this evening, then consistent with the conversation this evening, under the items that are in Section D, and specifically but not limited to Section D10, as well as Section E and F. All of those items the applicant has indicated are will comply items. To the extent that the applicant will comply, they will comply to the satisfaction of the township traffic, to the satisfaction of the township engineer, where appropriate to the township traffic engineer, where appropriate to PennDOT, and largely, as this discussion has reflected, the applicant will be required to get a highway occupancy permit, and so PennDOT will weigh in on all of the improvements that may be required along both of the Street Road and Mechanicsville Road frontages. The township will indicate through the township engineer and the township traffic engineer its desire to have the Street Road entrance be a right turn in, right turn out only. And to the extent that there can be barriers, pork chops, or the like that will prevent left turns in or left turns out, the township would like to see any and all means utilized to have that take place. If council is of a mind to grant preliminary and final this evening, it should be, insofar as the stormwater management is concerned, again, to the satisfaction of both the township engineer and to PennDOT, since they would be tying into the PennDOT system. A stormwater maintenance and monitoring agreement would be required with the township. And to the extent that the applicant has asked for waivers, the one waiver would be obvious, that it would be to allow both preliminary and final, but that would be subject to payment of all fees applicable to an application for final approval. And to the extent that it would apply to the landscaping, it's the intention of the township, and the applicant has agreed, that all of to the extent that there are any plantings that would deviate from what the township ordinances call for, the landscaping plan would be satisfactory to the township engineer, the township traffic engineer, and PennDOT, since there may be some site issues involved. But to the extent that there is any deviation from what the ordinance strictly requires, the intention is at all times for the buffering to be worked in consult with the neighboring property owner to provide as much buffering as is possible, and it won't otherwise affect traffic flow, and again would be satisfactory to the township engineer, township traffic engineer, and PennDOT. If there are any plantings that are required but would not be provided, the applicant has indicated its agreement to pay a fee in lieu of providing those plantings, should, in the unlikely occasion that may occur. But PennDOT may come along and say a number of those trees along either the Mechanicsville or Street Road frontage shouldn't be planted, in which case a fee in lieu of may be appropriate. So those are the items that or the notes that I made as the discussion was ongoing. I would also note that, and should be part of any approval, that this plan also includes a lot consolidation. What the township would want is a new deed for the combined lot to be recorded before or at the recording of the record plan for the project, so that the new deed reflecting the new boundaries is also on file with the Recorder of Deeds of Bucks County. I believe that would be any comments that I would want council to consider, Mr. Polari, in the event that council is inclined to grant this application. One other note, the township traffic engineer asked me to point out that in its review letter dated August 21, there's a typographical error in paragraph 12 where the township traffic engineer referenced driveway on State Road in Winks Lane. Obviously, that's not this property, and that should note that the driveways on Street Road and on Mechanicsville Road. So, lest there be any confusion, those are the roads that are intended to be referenced in that letter.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo. Is there any other questions?
I have one last question. Mr. Pizzo, what happens if PennDOT comes back after review of the plan and suggests a deceleration lane?
Normally, if you are granting an approval this evening, and I believe that, at least based on what I've just said, it would envision compliance with whatever PennDOT requires for the issuance of a highway occupancy permit, then the applicant would be required to install a decel lane. If, on the other hand, PennDOT says no because of the proximity of the driveway to the intersection and because of the traffic counts that are anticipated and any number of other traffic factors, a decel lane is not warranted, or, in fact, maybe counter to what PennDOT believes is safe, then ultimately, at the end of the day, it's PennDOT's call. So it is conceivable that for a 3,600 square foot bank with that driveway as far from the intersection as it is, they may not require a decel lane going in. But if they require one, it would have to be installed. PennDOT, at the end of the day, has final say.
Right, and that would change the plan somewhat as far as setbacks and so forth. Would that plan then have to come back in front of us?
Potentially, if anything PennDOT did created a new zoning issue, then the applicant would have to go back to the zoning hearing board. And I'm not an engineer, although I occasionally play one on TV. The right-of-way that, in certain cases, what's being measured in the way of setbacks and the like are being measured from rights-of-way line. So more often than not, the paved cartway doesn't represent the PennDOT right-of-way. And so PennDOT can come along and say, put in another 8 feet or 6 feet of blacktop, and that won't change the measurements of this plan because the measurements are coming from the right-of-way line and not the curb line.
Okay.
Not always, but in most cases.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank
I
you.
just have one question there, Mr. Pizzo. I agree with all your notes that are accurate with this, but I want to make sure, and I may have missed it, that the storm management board, the stormwater plan will be handed in and will meet all the requirements of the township engineer and PennDOT.
That's correct. My understanding of the plan is that a certain amount of, there's going to be underground storage as well as a surface basin. The surface basin will be the township's jurisdiction to the extent that the underground facilities are intended to perk, or to the extent that they're going to tie into PennDOT's storm sewers that are in the road, then they'll have to meet PennDOT's requirements.
Add it to your comments.
Certainly. And if I've said something that's incorrect, please
Just
Please
one
correct me.
minor thing, there is no surface.
There is no, it's all underground? Okay. I heard reference earlier to a basin and perking, so perhaps I misheard something.
And, no, to answer your question, the applicant would be agreeable to all of the conditions that you named.
Okay, if there's no other comments, then a motion would be in order.
I'll put the motion on the floor, Mr. President. The Township Council approve the land development preliminary and final for Republic Bank located 2961 Mechanicsville Road, tax map parcel 02-37-29, as well as 30 and 31. This will be based on the Township Engineer's review. I have of August 1st, 2018. The applicant will agree to the A, B, C, which is the zoning variance accepted on September the 12th. The applicant will comply with section D, 1 through 10, as well as stormwater management E and miscellaneous of F. I'm going to reiterate what I have in my notes to make it part of the motion. In addition to Mr. Pizzo, it's kind of reiterating what he had said also, but the applicant will apply for a PennDOT highway permit in agreement to the satisfaction of our township engineer. The variance, as I said, was received from September the 12th from our zoning board. They will consolidate the lots and record them in the record plan. The stormwater management plan will be accepted by our township engineer, PennDOT, as well with a maintenance agreement agreed to by our solicitor. They will comply with the Act 537 for the storage permission. Let me see, landscape engineer. The landscaping will be approved by our engineer, or both of our engineers in PennDOT, as well as any additional cost. There'll be, if changing the trees and the planting and such, there'll be a lieu paid in lieu fee of, payment in lieu of fee. And the applicant will agree to all PennDOT suggestions and implement those that are agreed to by our township engineer. Is there anything I missed, Mr. Pizzo?
No, that coupled with my comments, which the applicant has already indicated they are willing to comply with
All right, Doug.
all of those, that I believe we've got everything covered.
Okay, thank you. That's the motion.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Abstentions? Ayes have it, 410. Number 7 on the agenda, consideration of final land development plan, applicant Bensalem 21 LLC, care of Eric Kelly, location 1301 Bristol Pike, proposed use office building, zoning classification PCD, that's planned commercial district, tax parcel 2-29-474.
Good evening, Greg Edelman here on behalf of the applicant Bensalem 21. We're here this evening on what really is an amended final land development approval. This project has come before council many times over the last almost 10-plus years. Originally, there was a final approval for something very similar to what you see before you this evening for a 2-story addition, approximately 12,000 square feet total, about a 5,900 square foot footprint for office. It's located at 1301 Bristol Pike, which is where the existing Verizon store is located, as well as a Dunkin' Donuts and a hotel. The project went through some revisions where there was proposed to be a beauty school. That was amended and approved back in 2013. We're now back again to the original proposed office building that had previously been approved. We had to modify the plan to update it for stormwater management purposes. There was also a prior variance that had been granted for this project to permit an impervious coverage of 60%. That variance had expired, so we went back to the zoning hearing board and got that renewed, re-granted last month. We were in front of your planning commission in August. They recommended approval, subject to compliance with the township engineer's review comments. And we're here this evening. I have my project engineer, Mike Geithner from Bowler Engineering. He certainly can go through the engineering details in the review letter if council would like. We have revised the plans and resubmitted them to your engineer, and Bowler had submitted a response letter, I believe dated September 27th, outlining all of the compliance and responses to the township engineer's review, which I think was in August, if I'm not mistaken, August 8th. So whatever council's pleasure is this evening, I'd be happy to have Mr. Geithner go through that letter, or I'm happy to answer any questions you might have with respect to the proposed amended final approval.
Yeah, let's go through the Ron Gans's letter from October 3rd, 2018.
Sure, Mike, go ahead.
Good evening, members. Mike Geithner with Bowler Engineering on behalf of the applicant. Referring to Mr. Gans's August 8th review letter. Majority of the comments within the letter will comply and have been addressed as just noted. Under the zoning section, I'm on page 2 of Ron's letter. Items 1 and 2 refer to the impervious coverage variance. We were approved for an impervious coverage variance about 8 years ago for slightly over 60%. We have amended that application, received a variance for actually less than what was previously approved. So we're actually decreasing. Yes. I don't think I do, Ron. Apologize. Thank you. All right.
It's a lot shorter.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
good.
I'll go through the October 3rd letter. Page 2 under zoning, the variance was granted recently by the zoning hearing board. Under land development, there are 3 waivers, and these 3 waivers, again, were approved with the final land development plan back in 2010. First item is to allow sidewalk to be flush with curb along the building frontage in lieu of the required 4-foot wide planting strip, and that's obviously right up against the front door of the building. Second waiver is from section 201-112D for a planting strip of 5.8 feet in lieu of the required 7. Again, that's along the parking, along the front of the building. And that area is again near the front entrance of the doorway. And then the third waiver is from section 201-112P from requiring parallel screening parallel to the southwestern right-of-way line by means of earth berms, masonry, and brick walls. That is referring to the plan along the kind of the southeast portion of the site. There is a rather large slope dropping down from our parking area down to the internal ring road. And again, this is all internal to the site. These are not areas that are adjacent to any public right-of-ways. Under the stormwater management aspect, number 1 speaks to the basin siltation. If you refer to the plan, referring to the basin that's running parallel with Biddle Lane, and within that area, our site in question, the Hampton Inn, Holy Family University, all drain to this swale. That swale's been, let's just say, not maintained over the years. And as part of this project, the applicant, although they are one of 3 members of a tri-party agreement, the applicant will take the responsibility to address the siltation within that basin, or within, that berm, that swale that runs along Biddle Lane, to clean that up. There's a number of inlets that run along Biddle Lane. There's a number of stormwater connection points from Holy Family University that enter this swale, and they've been silted up to the point where the basins are clogged. The applicant is willing to take those, clean them up, regrade the swale so that it functions properly for not only the site in question, but also all the stormwater along Biddle Lane. Just east of that, towards Route 95, there's a smaller basin that is also overgrown, has a lot of trash in it. The applicant will be cleaning that up to make that function more properly, and that will all be done in advance of the stormwater eventually draining to the rather large basin that is adjacent to Route 95. So significant stormwater management improvements will be made in conjunction with this project, and there's a tri-party agreement that's in effect for future considerations of those areas in question. Number two, regards to water quality, we have revised the plan to provide some additional water quality inlets, as noted, and some snout devices. And then in regards to number three, I believe, Ron, that is just a statement in regards to the existing stormwater management basin that I was just referring to. That basin was approved for approximately 450,000 square feet impervious coverage back in 1985. And with this proposed improvement, although this is going over an area that's currently pervious, when you take all the impervious coverage into consideration, we will have a net reduction of almost 1,000 square feet of impervious going into that existing basin. So we believe this will be a net improvement when it's all said and done, specifically in regards to the stormwater management maintenance upgrades that will be taking part as part of this plan. We have secured our PA-DEP sewer flow exemption from DEP, and we have also received the necessary erosion control permits from the Bucks County Conservation District in regards to all areas I just mentioned as part of the improvements. So we're here to answer any questions you may have, and outside of the waivers, all the items are will comply.
Who's going to, you said you're going to stormwater management, you're going to clean up the swale there. Are you going to maintain that?
That will be maintained as part of the tri-party agreement between the applicant, Bensalem 21, Holy Family University, and Hampton Inn. And that agreement, I believe, has been filed with the township previously.
And Ed, if I may add, there's also going to be a separate operations and maintenance agreement for the on-site stormwater improvements as well, just for this property. I mean, that's per your ordinance. So there'll be two different agreements here that would be in play. The private agreement among the property owners that all flow to the common stormwater improvements, plus whatever on-site we have will be owned and maintained by the owner of that lot as well.
So you're saying you have an agreement with Holy Family, is that correct? That's what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct.
And we have it on record?
Yes.
Is that right, Ron?
I have it for, seen that, to my knowledge, we have not seen it.
I believe it was submitted as part of the original final approval. It's been in place for some time. But I can provide the solicitor with another copy.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to have that in our files. That's it.
So do you have the execution date of the tri-party agreement?
I believe this one is December 5th, 1991.
Okay. And let me just say, I can certainly appreciate the significant improvement. However, I mean, basically what you're saying is that the basins are clogged and you're willing to clean them up with this development. I guess my question is that, you know, if that was an issue to begin with, why didn't we, and I don't know if we were aware of it or not, but obviously it's something that we could probably go back on with the tri-party agreement with the current tenants that are down there.
In many cases, Mr. Tukmajian, older developments in the township, such as this PCD, portions of which what is currently the Holiday Inn, previously the Hampton Inn, and the Verizon building, which were built many years ago, were constructed before the change in the laws that both allow and now require the township to get stormwater facilities, maintenance and monitoring agreements with property owners. So the township didn't previously have the ability necessarily to go onto private property, inspect stormwater facilities, and mandate that they go in and desilt or what have you. To an extent we did, but not to the extent we do today since the change in the law. As council has indicated, as part of this application, the township will be getting, because we get them now with every land development that gets approved, a stormwater maintenance and monitoring agreement, which will clearly put the onus on the applicant to be responsible for maintaining this basin. So with this approval, they're going to execute an agreement that is going to cover their on-lot facilities as well as the common facilities. Now, to the extent that they have a subsequent agreement with Hampton Inn, Dunkin' Donuts, Verizon, any of the other, Holy Family, any of the other properties or users that go into the common stormwater facilities, they'll have the ability to exercise those rights vis-a-vis those other property owners to say, well, you know, we're going in and we're desilting and what have you, and give us a third, give us a third. But as far as the township's concerned, all of this is at least going to be part of a new agreement that we're going to have that's going to be written to today's standards that will allow us to go in and mandate what's laid out in Ron's letter, and the ability to go out and inspect and make sure that these facilities are being maintained properly.
Understood, thanks for the explanation, but currently, as of this evening, based off of the change of the law, we could still technically go out today, see that the basins are not as effective with storm water management, and cite those particular properties.
We certainly could, but what you're suggesting is, in many cases, not something that is evident to the eye that a township inspector, or in this case, it would really have to be an engineer, would note by driving by a particular basin that it is or isn't working. The NPDS and the MS4 requirements that are in place today require the township to go out and do inspections of different stormwater facilities within the township. And so the township has a schedule, if you will, to the extent manpower allows, to go out and deal with much of what's in the township's residential areas within the township. To the extent that a basin on a commercial property may or may not be functioning, again, is not necessarily something that's evident to the eye, and without the township receiving a complaint from someone that we're getting stormwater, we're being inundated with stormwater either among the buildings that are on that site or somewhere nearby, it would not necessarily be something that would be high in the township's inspection priorities to determine that this basin needs to be desilted.
Yep, understood. I'm just making the point here as far as it being significant improvement. I mean, we could certainly go out and have that addressed. And that leads me to my second point as far as the variance for the impervious space. And being that we're talking about stormwater management, we're looking for an additional 10% on the impervious space. And that's concerning. It leads me to believe that we're only going to create additional water runoff, in my mind, and we're only looking at an additional 1,000 square foot for some basin. And do we feel, based off of the variance of the 10%, that that's still going to accommodate the needs for the water management?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to that very quickly. We have to. By law and by the regulations, when we add the additional impervious, it has to go into the calculations for the stormwater management design. So we have to be able to show that that's being controlled or dealt with throughout the system. So just because you get the variance doesn't mean you don't have to add that into your calculations. So it's inclusive.
And I understand that. However, right now, we're having issues with stormwater management because the basins aren't being maintained.
Well, so there's a little more to it than just that. We're adding stormwater where stormwater doesn't exist, and upgrading or technically getting it back into working order. And what I wanted to add was that we are not the permittee of that basin, so we don't own it, and it's not under Bensalem 21. We have a secondary right to go in there in order to maintain it. I believe the hotel is the permittee, because it's on their property, and they are the primary obligor under the agreement to actually have to maintain these things. So Mr. Pizzo is correct. It's an old agreement that hasn't really been, quote-unquote, followed to the T, whereas now you have new regulations. We'll get a new agreement for our stormwater on our site, as well as some ability to come in and maintain it in a better fashion. So I think you'll see the improvement, okay, by adding additional stormwater facilities on the site, cleaning out that swale and making sure the basin's working. Without this project, I don't think you'd see that. I think it would just sit there the way it has been. So at least this way, you'll be able to get some improvement out of the stormwater facilities that have been there for a long time.
Well, it's not going to sit there. I mean, we could certainly have it addressed ourselves, regardless of this development, though, per Mr. Pizzo.
Maybe.
My third point, and my biggest concern is there was some mention about the traffic light out on Bristol Pike, and I'm pretty familiar with this particular shopping center. I mean, I went to school down there, Holy Family, and it's tight, to say the least. And then to put another 6,000 square foot building down there without at least addressing some of the traffic issues, I have some concerns.
Well, I believe they are being addressed. Your traffic engineer commented, our traffic engineer responded. We'll be considering their comments and getting through the additional analysis. I don't know if
Sure,
I can speak
I
to
can
it
speak to
better than I
that.
can.
We had a chance to review, and we received the traffic planning and design review letter dated August 31st. We had a chance to do an analysis, traffic engineering analysis by McMahon Associates that was submitted and addressed with all the comments within the letter. Unfortunately, traffic planning and design did not receive the submission package from the township, unfortunately. However, we had a chance to speak to them earlier today regarding the traffic study. And we're here to say that all the comments within their letter will comply items. They're asking for some additional crash study and left turn analysis. But on the record, we're here to say that all the comments within the letter are all will comply. And in regards to minus that additional analysis that they've asked for just today, all the other comments within the letter have been addressed and are in the aforementioned plans that were resubmitted to the township. And that also includes a traffic impact fee that's required by the applicant.
Okay, just so I understand, the traffic impact was done based off of the proposed specs of who's going to go in there.
It's based off of an office use, and that's what it's anticipated, well, not anticipated, that's what the applicant is proposing, an office use.
Okay. And so just to answer the question, at this point, you're not willing to do any improvements on Bristol Pike?
The applicant will do the improvements on Bristol Pike and at the signal if warranted. We believe that based off the analysis that McMahon provided to traffic planning and design, that additional mitigation is not necessary. But again, they're looking for some additional information. We will supply that to, again, confirm our statement that no additional mitigation would be required. So as a condition of approval, if we're so lucky to receive that, obviously the traffic planning and design August 31st, 2018 review letter would be a condition of such approval.
Okay. Yeah, I just have concerns about, and I do have the letter, and he notes based on the significantly lower traffic volumes anticipated to be generated by the proposed office development, the traffic signal is not necessarily warranted at this time. However, I think that the traffic down there is an issue as it is currently, and if we're going to increase it, then I think we need to see some significant improvement, especially at that intersection. How many office space, I mean, do you have any idea as far as tenants, how many people that are going to be going in there?
No, we don't have a user at this point. So we use the standard ITE calculations for the total square footage of a general office building.
But could you agree we're still increasing the traffic then down there?
Well, sure, you're adding traffic, and that's what the additional analysis goes to show, whether that has the impact and if it's warranted. And obviously, your traffic engineer would be the arbiter of that based on the calculations, and they'd let us know, but we think we're okay. They'll confirm it.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
Yeah, you don't have a user in it. Now, I have some recollection of a beauty school at one
That's
time,
correct.
right?
Right.
I don't know, I guess it was like a long time ago, right?
It's 2013.
Okay, so you're not talking about putting that beauty school
No.
in there now, right?
No.
Okay, because there was some objection to that.
Right, and that had changed from a two-story to a one-story, actually had a larger footprint, and then also a different intensity of use based upon what was being proposed.
Okay, so that's.
So we're back to the original approval just for general office.
General office, okay.
Included in here, there's a couple letters. There's one from the Bucks County Planning Commission dated August 13th with some comments. Have you seen that?
Did you see the August?
Looking at it now.
You better have seen it.
Want to know how you're planning on addressing those comments?
Yeah, obviously, in regards to the building separation, we've submitted a zoning application, and obviously the plans were submitted to the township as part of the zoning review. And the building separation was not noted as an item of a violation. Number two, the stormwater management facility maintenance. We talked about that this evening.
Well, back up for a sec. It's not noted as a violation, but does the design address this issue? Is it attached by a common roof structure?
Currently, it's not proposed to be connected by a common roof structure.
So it's in violation even though it wasn't noted?
I could see it. It's all right. It's not our intention to require a variance for that, so we'll speak to the applicant and address that appropriately in regards to the necessary construction, in regards to having the buildings interconnected with the attached to the Verizon building. It's not the applicant's intention to really seek a variance for that
Okay, so
requirement.
the intent would be to comply with?
Correct.
Okay.
So you're the applicant. So I thought he was the applicant.
And it may be possible that as one of the prior iterations of this plan, that the plan was approved for one of the other buildings to be located in that location as well. So you may also want to go back and check the zoning history of this site to see if that's why it wasn't picked up.
And then the sewer, we do have a PADEP sewer module exemption for the flow associated with the office layout and anticipated flow.
Okay, and then comment two, you are preparing an O&M?
That's correct.
renewal? Okay.
Yes.
I also have a letter here dated August 2nd from the Township Fire Rescue Department rejecting the plan for 4 reasons that they've listed. Have you seen this letter?
We have, and we have provided the truck turning, talking to the fire marshal in regards to the required hydrant. It's the intention to comply with this review comment and to obviously acquire a clean letter from the fire marshal.
Okay.
So no open items that we're concerned with.
Let's see, I've also got a letter dated July 30th from a traffic safety evaluation from the Bensalem Township Police Department. They recognized one traffic issue, an exit from the common access drive to Biddles Lane should have a stop bar and stop sign.
Yes, and that's a will comply.
Okay.
If that has not been added to the plan set, we will add that. I can't see it. That's all I have.
That's everything.
Mr. Gans or Mr. Paizo, I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but back in 2013, when this property came in, there was an issue of the basins and the water, and the residents came out saying that they were being flooded on Biddle Lane, and they were supposed to take care of those basins back then. Can we check the record and see if there was, what the approvals were back at that time, and who is responsible for it? There was an agreement between everybody on there what was supposed to be done, And if it's not being done, why not? And that's something we should be keeping an eye on. But can we go back to that and make sure what the approvals were at that time and who was going to do what, and make sure that the residents that live off of Biddle Lane back there don't keep having these same problems because we okay something and then it happens again. So can we go back and look at that and make sure that this agreement's in line?
Yes, we can, but the last approval did require this applicant to take care of the swale and the basin, and then enter into a tri-party agreement for future maintenance. So it's really this applicant, the swale and the basin.
Okay, we never received the tri-party agreement.
No,
That
we
was
have
part
not.
of the approval, that they were supposed to supply us with that.
Right, because the application never went forward.
Thank you.
I would say if you consider approval, we should make it a condition that we see that tri-party agreement.
Do we have any other questions from the board right now?
Is there a time period when these swales have to be cleaned?
Well, that'll have to be in their improvements agreement, and we won't release the necessary funds until it's done.
So it'll get done? We'll make sure it's done.
Yeah.
I will say in the matter of the sequence of construction, the intention is to do downstream and work upstream. So obviously improve these facilities before we add any additional stormwater to them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had the muscle, for lack of a better word, to make sure it was done.
Yeah, it'll be part of the improvements agreement as a line item.
All right.
Assuming that this moves forward tonight, what's your timeline? Because clearly this has been bouncing around for the past 8 years. So what's to say that, number one, you're not going to come back here 2 years later with a different design, or 8 years later with a different design? And number two, when is construction going to start?
Right away, and we're going right into the ground this time. So it's going to be on spec.
Okay.
And we don't want to come back, we want to build vertical.
And how long?
And I don't mean that in the way that I don't like coming here.
How long do you anticipate construction will take?
18 months total.
Okay.
Okay, I have one more question. And again, I'm doing this from memory from 2013, these things are popping in my head. But my understanding was, besides the beauty school gone, is that this is the last spot that was approved of the development. So,
correct.
And I have some concerns that Mr. Techman says. From the original design of this development, this was a spot that was allowed to be occupied. Now, after this, we're done.
That's correct.
Yes.
So an office building is probably better than, for instance, a beauty school.
Yes, from an impact standpoint.
After this, that development's full.
Right.
Which was Richie's Farm Market when I was a kid.
Was it?
Whatever happened to good old Richie?
Any other questions from the board? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this application?
Good evening. My name is Peter Tantella, and I'm an engineer representing Holy Family University in this matter. Holy Family University owns and occupies the property at 1311 Bristol Pike, which is immediately due southeast of the property in question. And I'm here this evening to express our concern, the university's concerns about the proposed stormwater management system associated with the development. As mentioned, the current system is distressed, and we've come to learn recently that the stormwater management proposed for this site has been changed drastically over the last few weeks, and we would just like the ability to review that. The new system appears to contain no rate control, but we haven't seen the plan, so we'd like the ability to review the plan in terms of its stormwater management component.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
If that basin is in bad shape, why aren't you and the rest of the people that are there that have an agreement to keep them clean and working, why are they not up to date and why are they not working properly?
Well, and again, as the university will abide by its agreement to help maintain those common basins. But as mentioned previously, the hotel property really is, the basins are located on the hotel's property. And the way the agreement is situated, the way the agreement is constructed, they really have to take the lead role in maintaining those basins. It's actually much more difficult for any of the other subsequent properties to step in and perform that maintenance. So they need to be compelled to take the lead role in that, but that's how the agreement is written. But the university will abide by and live up to its portion of the maintenance.
Did you sign on to this agreement? Have you signed on to this agreement that we're talking about? Holy Family?
Well, no, the agreement was crafted in 1991, and the university didn't own the property at that time, but it went to subsequent owners and subsequent properties as well. So by virtue of their ownership of the property, they're part of the agreement.
Mr. Pizzo, since this agreement's out there, it's old, and nobody's taking care of what they're supposed to be taking care of, as part of the motion, if this is to go forward, can we put in the motion that we need a new agreement by the parties that are there so that everybody's held responsible for what needs to be done and not finger pointing, it's their person, it's theirs, it's theirs? Is there something that we can do to make sure that we get an agreement that has teeth?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
I would offer that you just impose it on us, and then we'll deal with it, because I don't agree with his assessment on what the agreement says. It actually says that each individual property owner has the right to do it. If the hotel fails to do it, you can step in and do it. You don't have to compel. You don't have to do anything. So if we have an O&M that says we have to control the stormwater, then you have the ability to get us to do that.
Understood, but you have water coming from all the places on the property, so it should be an agreement that everybody is responsible for it, not just one person.
We don't have control over getting the other parties to agree.
We do.
But if you make it a condition of our approval, then you hold our approval up. So I'm offering to council that we as a lot owner have our O&M say that we're supposed to maintain these facilities. I don't think you have the authority under this application to require what you're suggesting. I think you might have the authority in general to enforce it, but you understand where I'm going with this. My client is not running away from its responsibility.
Understood.
So-
Mr. Pizzo, is that something that we can go back to all the units and all the people that are there and reassess? Or do we need to have Mr. Gans go in now and see what all the problems are in the facility and what we can do as a township? And this is going to help protect the neighbors too from all the water runoff that's going down.
Well, we can certainly do all of the things you've said. To the extent that Bensalem 21 is standing before you this evening saying, we will take responsibility for that basin, put it on us, then that is now a condition of the approval, and they're agreeing to that. So to the extent that the 1991 agreement says that the hotel is responsible for maintaining the basin, which it does, but then says if the hotel should fail to maintain the basin following written notice from the other parties to this agreement, those other parties can then go in and fix the basin and charge it back to the hotel.
Right.
So I believe that this, in concert with what's being said by Bensalem 21, the approval will put the responsibility for that basin on their shoulders.
Right.
And if they can't bring it into compliance, then they don't meet the conditions of approval.
Right, and I think that's the best way, because you're not supposed to be in the business of enforcing private agreements. You're supposed to be maintaining public health and safety. I totally agree. So to the extent that it's necessary, I think it's streamlined if you just put it as a condition on us and then let us go chase them.
That's fine, but
And none of this stops the township from
Correct.
having Mr. Gans go out tomorrow and start to issue, have his inspectors
I'm just
issue.
concerned that, when we do this, water going across Biddle and into the neighborhood. So whatever the agreement is, whatever is able to be done, it's something we have to look forward to protect the
Absolutely.
neighborhood. So.
I agree.
Can I have one more question? I don't want to get in an argument here with people.
Well, we're still in the audience part of it.
Oh, we are? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we haven't closed that.
Well, I want to question about his statement, though.
Go ahead.
The audience guy made a statement that there was major changes to the stormwater in the last week.
Okay.
Now, he had said there wasn't that.
Yeah, there wasn't, but Mike can explain that better than I can.
Okay.
Sure, we looked at We looked at infiltration of the, increase of the impervious coverage. We looked at having an underground stormwater facility. Geotechnical engineer was brought on board to look at infiltration testing for this area, and the infiltration testing came back with really a zero value, no infiltration. So as a result of that, we have changed our design to focus more on water quality. I've worked with Ron's office in regards to providing snouts and other BMPs associated with water quality.
So we could make something agreeable upon the township engineer, not on Holy Family's engineer.
I would prefer that.
I would certainly ask that, and I'm sure they would agree to have Mr. Tantella look at the plans.
Yeah, they can look at it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to make a thing conditioned upon somebody else.
I think between the three engineers, we can
Okay.
get that squared away.
Yeah, Pete's a good guy. I know he's not coming here with any ill will in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Two different statements.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are any other questions from the board? If not, then a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the amended final development plan revised according to Mr. Gantz's letter of October 3rd, 2018, that the zoning was granted, land under D, the waivers are reapproved for under number 1. The 3 waivers are reapproved that were approved by council in the past. The stormwater, under E, the stormwater management will be approved by Mr. Gantz, according to Mr. Gantz's approval, that all the mentioned agreements for the agreement to maintain the basins will be provided to the township, and also that the applicant will take responsibility for making sure that the current basin and swale will be cleaned, regardless of other people taking the responsibility or not, that they'll take sole responsibility of doing that at this time as part of this application. Is there anything else, Mr. Pizzo, that should be added to that?
No, I believe your last point is a fair summary of the discussion. The applicant has agreed that it will enter into a stormwater maintenance and monitoring agreement, as well as any other agreements necessary to reflect that it is going to be solely responsible for bringing that basin into compliance to the satisfaction of the township engineer, making sure that it functions to the satisfaction of the township engineer, and the applicant will use whatever means it needs to bring the other property owners that share in that responsibility along for the ride, but it will, vis-a-vis the township, it will be the applicant's responsibility.
Okay, and I would also add that under the traffic safety review dated July 30th, 2018, that the exit from the common access drive that builds in whatever stop bar and stop sign will become a will comply part of the agreement. And also, as pointed out, that the opposition or the problems that the township fire marshal had with the property will be addressed, and this will be conditioned upon receiving a clear letter from approval from the fire marshal, and all requirements of the fire marshal will be complied with in order to receive such a clear letter.
He agreed to comply with all the issues on the traffic engineer's letter.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know specifically, but also the traffic engineer recommendations will be added too. Thank you.
And the comments from the Bucks County Planning Commission.
Right.
All the comments he's agreeing to? Are you agreeing to? Okay. I'll add the comments addressed by the Bucks County Planning Commission.
Is your motion complete?
I think, yeah, unless anybody else has
Sounds
anything.
good to me, Jack.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Then nay.
Abstentions? Passes 4-1-0.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Do you want these? Mr. Edelman. Mr. Edelman.
Okay. The next one. Well, it has to be addressed. That wood has to be addressed because it falls down to the other.
Number 8 on the agenda, consideration of a preliminary and final land development plan, applicant BSD Housing LP, it's Bensalem Veteran Residences, location 3063 and 3095 Mechanicsville Road, proposed use residential, zoning classification BP Business Professional, tax parcel 2-37-63 and 2-37-63-1.
Good evening, Mr. Polari. Douglas Maloney representing the applicant this evening. I've provided proof of notice to Mr. Pizzo, who's reviewing it now. I have 2 witnesses that should probably be sworn in.
Thank you. Bring them forward.
Mr. Fisher and Mr. Zugner. Raise your right hand, please.
Raise your right hand. You swear to testify that you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God, you do so.
I do.
Can you have them give their names and where they're from, please?
Certainly. Mr. Zugner is a project engineer from Mid-Atlantic Engineering. He may not be necessary to testify because there really aren't any engineering issues, but he's here in the event that there are any questions. Mr. Fisher is Regional Vice President of Penrose Properties, which is the operating entity for this project.
Thank you.
And he can answer any questions. We have a very brief slideshow we'd like to show you after we review the plan, and Mr. Fisher can explain how this project will function.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Very briefly, this is a proposed 40-unit residential facility that's going to have a strong veterans preference for the affordable housing units. There's going to be 41 bedroom units. It's going to be a 3-story building. It will include staff office for a manager. It will include a conference room. It will include an office, Gesundheit. It will include an office for a counselor, veterans affair, administrator, counselor, social worker. It will include a lounge facility, a fitness room, all on the first floor, and we'll show you some photos of those later on. We're proposing 23 parking stalls, including 2 handicap. We are going to handle our stormwater management with an underground stormwater facility. It's going to be, I think, 6 very large pipes, 90 feet long, I think 48-inch in diameter, all underground. It's going to be a very low volume type of use. This has been kicking around the township, frankly, since 2011. And variances were granted at that time for this use. More recently, the proposal was for much more intensive use. Frankly, it was for 4 stories and I believe 69 units. After presenting this to the Planning Commission, we listened to township comments, listened to Planning Commission comments, listened to neighboring comments, and that resulted in a significant reduction in the scope of the plan, and it's now as I said, a 40-unit proposed plan. That also resulted in changing some of the features around, including significantly some buffering with the neighboring, against the neighboring properties. So we've come a long way working with both the township and with the neighbors, and we think that we have a pretty exciting plan for your consideration this evening. As I said, there really are no engineering issues. This is one of those odd cases where we're not asking for any waivers. The only waiver we're seeking this evening is your approval of both preliminary and final. The site itself is about 1.5 acres. It's currently owned by the Bucks County Redevelopment Authority. If this project is approved, it will get this project back onto the tax rolls for the county and township and school district. The building footprint itself is about 13,700 square feet. And as I said, it has a single driveway onto Mechanicsville Road. I can review Mr. Gann's review letter. I'll tell you right now, though, all the comments are will complies, and I'm referring to Mr. Gann's review letter of September 6, 2018. Section C, the zoning comments, Mr. Gann's notes, this is located in the BP zoning district, and he notes the variance that was granted in 2011 for this particular use. In frankly, this particular project. Section D deals with land development, and there are 8 comments. All of them are will complies. The first simply notes that the access driveway on Mechanicsville Road and the stormwater sewer inlet hook-in both involve permits, required permits from PennDOT. Secondly, Mr. Gans notes that the traffic control and lighting of the parking lot will be subject to traffic planning and designs review, and that's a will comply. We will comply with whatever they require. Comment 3 notes that a wetland certification should be placed on the plan. Comment 4 notes that a location plan should be included on sheet 2. Comment 5 notes that the proposed building footprint area should be noted on the plan. Comment 6 notes that required monuments should be included on the plan. Comment 7 notes that there is a pipe manufacturer that should be identified on sheet 6. And comment 8 seeks clarification of the connection of the existing stormwater sewer structure with an outlet structure. All of those comments are will complies. With regard to stormwater management, Mr. Gans notes that the stormwater management facility as proposed complies with your ordinance. He does note that we have to provide the post-construction stormwater management plan, and we also have to provide the erosion and sedimentation control narrative report. And that comment is a will comply. Excuse me. In section F, he notes a couple of typos. The words subdivision and or should be removed from sheet 2. And apparently there's a reference to a new 4-story building. That should be revised and changed to a 3-story building. That's just a typo from the previous plan that had been submitted. There is a Township Fire Marshal's review letter. And all the comments on that review letter are will comply as well. There are 5 comments. Number 1 notes that we need to provide a fire apparatus turning design plan demonstrating that the township's fire apparatus can properly navigate throughout the property, and that the height of the proposed porte cochere shall be a minimum of 13 feet 6 inches. Number 2, we should provide a detailed plan of the proposed fire department emergency access way, and that is by virtue of reinforced, surrounding the property on 3 sides is reinforced landscaping to allow fire access around the building. And of course that's a will comply. Comment 3 states that we have to indicate the fire lane locations, including all required signage and markings on the pavement. That's a will comply. Comment 4, the fire department connection shall be located at an approved location on the front of the proposed building and within 100 feet of a fire hydrant. That's a will comply. And number 5 is that fire hydrants shall be located at locations approved by the fire department, and that's a will comply. So they're the 2 review letters in a nutshell. I'm not sure why our plan isn't up there.
Did you address our traffic planning and design from our engineer too, Doug?
I didn't have a TPD review letter. There was a note on Mr. Gann's review letter that the lighting would be the first 7 comments I can see are all will complies, and the street lighting comments. Comments 8 through 12 are all will complies, dealing with street lighting and traffic. Then the final comment, comment number 14, notes that an impact fee will be required, and of course, that's a will comply as well. So everything's a will comply.
I don't think you should be subject to the impact fee based on the welfare of the community that you're providing. That's an exception that's allowed by the impact fee ordinance.
We would certainly accept a waiver of that requirement. Now you can see what I was talking about. That's the plan. You can see the parking facility. Obviously, the brown is the building footprint. And you can see in, I guess, sort of the cross-hatched area is the reinforced landscaping area that allows emergency access vehicles to go around the 2 sides of the building. I think I misstated and said 3 sides of the building. You'll note the fence to the rear of the property and the plantings that we've put in. That was at the request of neighboring property owners. And of course, the fact that it's 3 stories and not 4 was at the request of the neighboring property owners as well. You can see that that's a rear driveway immediately to the right of our building for the shopping center, the rear of the shopping center that's adjacent to our building. On the other side are residential properties, single-family homes. And to the rear, that's the villas at Regents Glen, an age-restricted community of quads, I believe. If you have any questions about the design, again, Mr. Zugner is present and can answer those. If you'd like, I can have Mr. Fisher describe how the project's going to work. And I hate to take that plan down since it took us so long to get it up there, but I'd like to show you a very brief slideshow of what this facility is actually going to look like.
Thank you very much, Council President, members of council. Thanks very much for allowing us to come and speak and present on this important project tonight. My name is Jacob Fisher. I'm a regional vice president with Penrose. We are the owner of BSV, the applicant tonight. Penrose has been in business for 40 years. We've developed 250 communities in 15 states, about 15,000 units of housing, and we have also developed, completed 1 community that serves veterans and have 5 others in process. So this is work that we are actively engaged in. The development that we're speaking of tonight will consist of 40 one-bedroom units. It will be age-restricted to individuals 62 years and older. If you actually want to show, there's a rendering of the site, which we'll talk about. And it will be prioritized to veterans, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But when we talk about affordable housing, the bulk of these units will be set aside for individuals or families with incomes between $32,000 and $38,500 in rough terms. It also changes each year with changes to cost of living adjustments. And the rents for those units would range between $749 and $913 per month. We seek to market to veterans, specifically want to market to veterans from Bensalem and the area. We plan to do that by working closely locally with Joe Safran, working closely with... Oh, sure. So rents for... So I gave two extremes of an income target from $32,000 to $38,000, and the rents that go with those are $749 a month to $913 a month. So our objective is to market to veterans, and there are about 12,000 seniors, 62 and older, within Bensalem. Bless you. And 1,700 of those are veterans, and so our intent would be to work with veterans serving organizations to identify potential candidates well ahead of opening the building for marketing. And what that does is it generates an interest list of people that can apply. They'll understand what the income qualifications are and what the steps are to apply. This is something that we've done in other areas. We placed in service a development in Edison, New Jersey that had 22 units for veterans, and we worked for a year with county officials, with the local American Legions and the VFWs and the senior centers to get the word out to veteran groups, and that's the exact same effort that we would commit to make here with this development in order to ensure the maximum number of veterans that we can of the 40 units. We're also working with Dan Fraley at the county level and would reach out to him and work with him on securing connections with veterans serving organizations. As far as transportation goes at the site, we will have a bus or on-demand shuttle, which is provided by the County Veterans Administration, which individuals in the complex can use to go to doctor's appointments or shopping or other types of obligations. There's also obviously shopping right next door, and we plan to be expanding the sidewalk that will connect down to Street Road in order to give access to the bus. So there'll be various options for transportation. As far as management goes, we'll have a site manager, site property manager during business hours, maintenance, and then a part-time supportive services worker as well. And then we're also working with the Veterans Multi-Service Center to provide 20 hours a week of on-site case management services and other services to the community. I think it's important to say that Penrose is a dedicated member of the communities where we serve. We would like to be and strive to be a good neighbor. Typically when we're looking to do new development somewhere, we show people the communities that we own in order to demonstrate what a good job we do keeping up our communities. That's very important to us. And it's equally important that we market and that we rent up the units responsibly. And so in order to do that, our management company, which is affiliated with Penrose, or Penrose Properties Development, and then we have an affiliated management company that will manage our communities. They go through a background screening process, which includes criminal and credit checks, and also we do home visits for potential renters in our communities to make sure that they upkeep their current units. So really, the most important thing that you can do to ensure that a community is set off in the right direction is to do an excellent job with initial lease-up, and that's what we're committed to doing.
Some of the questions I was going to ask, you already answered, thank you. And one is this for-profit, so staying on the tax rolls, which is always nice. And I appreciate that you're going to look at Bensalem residents and Bucks County residents, since it's Bucks County Housing Authority working with Mr. Safford and Mr. Fraley, because we have a lot of veterans that live in Bensalem and Bucks County. And I know with Jesse, I'm sure it's important to take care of the veterans, you being a veteran, and it's something that I think is good for the community to help our veterans that went and put their lives on the line to protect this country.
I had a quick question. To me, naming the amount of veterans, and just from being, seeing the amount of people at the VFW and the trip down to Washington that Mr. Saffron runs, the amount of veterans that are involved, there seem, and 1,700 veterans or something you said?
Within Bensalem?
Yeah, within Bensalem. So why is it not veteran restricted as opposed to veteran preference? Because it would seem there's only 42 or 41 units,
40.
that it would be easy to find 40 veterans. So would you exhaust all the veterans before you allowed a non-veteran to go in there?
So we're constrained by fair housing rules, and we need to market the property, however, broadly. However, the efforts that I'm describing early on in terms of outreach to veterans organizations well before the actual lease-up begins is the way that we will ensure that we get a community that is, if not 100%, certainly predominantly veteran.
Okay. And I'm glad you're a for-profit as far as property taxes are concerned, because you'll be paying property taxes on the building, which is a good thing for the local community. But my question would be, if you're, and I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, but if you're renting an apartment for $750 to a veteran, which is great, how are you making a profit? You know what I mean? Like if you're a for-profit, is somebody subsidizing this to a point where you can make a profit? How does that work?
So the development is going to be funded by and large by a program called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, which is a federal program that's administered through the state. And there's an allowable fee that we earn on developing the property, which is really held back until we deliver a property and we'll deliver the project that we promised and make sure that it's leased up appropriately. And then, there is some amount of cash flow that can be made on this development, but it's a very, very narrow margin because in exchange for receiving the benefits of the programs, of the federal programs, we're renting to a restricted, as you note, a restricted level. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to rent it for $750 and then I rent it for $1,000. There's no upside there. So really, our main source of income is on the development side, but it's absolutely necessary to our current business and our future business to do a good job of maintaining the property. And so that means being tight with our operating budgets, being responsible with our maintenance, and making sure that our units are filled with rent-paying tenants, and making sure that the community is healthy and thriving. But the actual money is very little on the rental side of the development.
And from a development standpoint, and I don't want to be cynical, I just want to know how it works. Your development money comes from government money to build houses for moderate income, especially veterans, some kind of program?
Combination of tax credits, which is an incentive for for-profit companies to invest in affordable housing. We're also taking out a market rate mortgage from a conventional lender as part of it, and then there are other programs that would be included, like county home funds, which is a federal program.
Okay, and there's no, say, what controls you from filling the building and then saying, you know what, we need to raise the rents to $1,000 to $1,200? What restricts you from doing that?
There'll be a deed restriction in place for 30 years, which will limit which will restrict who we can rent to.
So once somebody qualified and got in there, they would be able to continue to afford to live there?
Absolutely.
And you couldn't raise the rent?
No. Other than with a cost of living adjustment, but no, we couldn't decide tomorrow, hey, we're going to double your rent. No, sorry, you're out. That would not be allowable.
Okay. And once they qualify to get in, then they're in?
Yes.
Right, okay. So it works like some of the other senior housing?
Right. Okay. But it also works like rental housing in general, that if somebody qualifies to get in initially and then becomes a bad actor for whatever reason, we have ability to remove that person to not bring down the overall quality of the community.
But if someone qualifies to get in and then comes into extra money, they don't get thrown out for having
No.
extra money at that point.
No, the
right?
way that the code works is that if you are qualified at initial
Right.
lease-up, you're allowed to stay in the unit.
So God willing, someone could hit the lottery and stay, or they
Right.
like it there, right?
I don't know why they'd stay, but you know what I mean, they're buying it.
Well, they like veterans,
Yeah,
you know? But that's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a handful of questions. To my knowledge, there's nothing like this currently in the township, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there is a need for this kind of housing to support our veterans.
We believe so. Yes.
Okay. I'm a little concerned with the parking situation. It's just for 40 units, you've got about 22 parking
22.
spots. Do you expect that your residents, because they're elderly, are not going to have a vehicle?
So we manage about 50 different communities of this size, serving populations of 62 and older. We do an ongoing count of our units to make sure we discount the units that are suburban and complying with RSIS, which are way over parked, and we discount the units that are urban and have zero, and we look at what the actual parking utilization is, and about a 0.5, which is just under what we have here, seems to be the parking utilization on our 62-plus communities. So we're comfortable with that, and the addition of the county shuttle that we talked about and access to the bus are other means of transportation.
Okay. Now, your other communities, your other 62-plus communities, are they about the same size, roughly 40 units? Are they more or less?
This is actually a little on the small side. They tend to be more in like the 60 unit seems to be the sweet spot for properties of this type.
Okay. Now, in those other properties, about what percentage is filled with veterans? For your residents, is it 100%? Is it 50%?
Well, I can't say across the board because I don't know. I mean, the one example that I gave was development in Edison, New Jersey, where we had a target to do 22 veteran units, and we were able to do that through outreach to the to different organizations that serve veterans and really making them aware prior to lease up that the opportunity was out there.
Sure.
And I use that as an example to say that it can be done, but it takes work, and that's what we are committed to do.
But what would you expect, I guess for this unit, what would you expect in terms of percentage of veteran residents?
We're going to make an effort to fill it 100%.
Okay.
But veterans also have choices about where they want to live,
Of course,
and can't
right.
be compelled to live, somewhere that.
No, but I mean, as Mr. Knowles pointed out, with 1,700 veterans alone in the township and 40 units, hopefully this does fill up. I guess, are you reaching out to veteran service organizations as well?
So we have started that process. So we've talked to Dan Fraley. We're working with the Veterans Multi-Service Center in Philadelphia as a service provider. So we started the process. I think there's a lot more that we can do. I know that you sir, are a veteran, and would love actually to have input because I know that it's very important to members of this body that we fill this as much as possible with veterans. And so to the extent that you have suggestions of who we should be talking to, people on your email lists and others that would be interested, we'd love to get the word out through you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that definitely the veteran service organizations that provide services that I think most people aren't aware of, that kind of be that liaison between veterans and their benefits that they're eligible for, including housing opportunities like this. Organizations like AMVETS or Veterans of Foreign Legion, DAV, Wounded Warrior Project, all of those types of organizations are probably good outreach for you. If your preference is veterans, that's probably where you would go with that.
Thank you for the suggestions.
Are you aware that we have a Veterans Advisory Board here in the township?
No.
Okay. I'm a little curious why, and I don't know, maybe you can answer this, Mr. Polari, of why they weren't consulted in this, just because it's a project that clearly is designated for veterans, and we do have our own Veterans Advisory Board, Mayor. I would have hoped that they would have some input just to weigh in, and maybe they have some thoughts as well. They can
They
provide.
are aware of the project. They were asked to come this evening,
Okay.
and I'm sure that they would be. Jim, Jim, come up, please.
I can't, I'm at the door here, so someone can take.
Alan will take your place.
Thank you, Jim.
I discussed this project with Mr. Schlemmer and Mr. Trucks, who are in the Korean War veterans and.
Yeah, they were very, very.
They're aware of this.
Okay. I'm just curious to hear if they had any comments or input on this.
Yeah, I
It's good.
discussed it with Mr.
It's a
Schlemmer
good,
and Mr.
it's a
Trucks.
good question, and you will work together with them too, I'm
We would love to
sure.
work, yeah, and I mean,
surprised they didn't know,
I would absolutely love to work together.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to have a meeting with you people.
Stand up, you gotta go to the microphone, Jim. Jim, go to the microphone, please.
Jim Pinto, P-I-N-T-O, Bensalem, Veterans Advisory Board, Bensalem. I'd like to have a meeting with you fellows before this process goes through, so we can understand on both hands, Philadelphia and Bucks County and Bensalem, if that's possible.
I don't think we can hold up the process for that, Jim, but they could agree to work together with you on this to make sure
Okay,
of what's
that's
going
fine.
on.
I'd appreciate it,
Yep.
yeah.
And-
Okay.
And we're still, we're seeking our approval for our site plans tonight, but we're still a ways away from opening, so we have lots
Okay,
of time.
fine, as long as they work with us, that'll be
We'll
fine.
supply you with the information of the advisory
That's
board, and you
good.
can set up a meeting with them and talk with them.
Absolutely.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Hmm?
That was my last question, so thank you.
I have just 2 points. What's the size of these units?
The units are approximately 650 square feet.
Can we just go back to the parking real quick? Share some of the same concerns. I mean, you're going to have roughly 4 or 5 people working there at one time from your earlier statements, site manager, maintenance, support services, case management, and that leaves you 17 spaces out of the 22, assuming each one of them are driving there. And you have 41 units, is that correct?
40.
40 units.
Yep.
You know, what do you do if you get into a situation where you rent 30 of those units and at least 17 of those units are bringing a vehicle? What do you do in that event where you need additional parking?
Just one thing I wanted to clarify, I think that our council mentioned a number of different functions, but some of those were embedded in one person. So there's a property manager, maintenance, and supportive services there that's there part-time. So it's, 2 people that are there a lot of time and 1 person that's in and out. But to your larger question, first of all, it will be clear that parking is available on a first-come, first-serve basis. And our experience is that that ratio would be sufficient. If we found out for some reason that we couldn't rent units or there was some issue, we would have to see if there were other opportunities either at the commercial complex next door. But our feeling just based on experience and doing lots of these developments is that the parking will be okay.
Yeah, I just have the concerns with the parking. I mean, I understand you respect your experience, but the property is relatively on a smaller scale, and I don't know if there's a whole heck of a lot of room to put that additional parking if you should find the need. But okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I agree with that comment too, that I understand that you meet the criteria of 0.5 parking spaces per apartment, but I just don't think it's going to be enough too. And once you have a lack of parking, you have a lack of people who want to be there. I mean, these are not hermits. They're going to have family that want to visit them. They want to have, hey, a birthday party or the holidays come along. And if it was a senior housing that needed assistance or something like that, you can see that the people are going to be in there, not going to be traveling around. But I'm assuming these are going to be viable individuals that need to move around the community and want to move around the community. I just don't think the parking is enough.
Yep, I hear your concern. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines, when we look at the parking for these facilities, is there a specific thing that you would look at to do this? I know with a lot of senior facilities, a lot of the people don't drive, they'll take the bus or take transportation, things of that nature, but I understand what everybody's saying with the amount of parking spots. Is there a certain calculation you look on similar to what they're talking about that you take into consideration when you would approve this?
Yes, in our ordinance, it specifically says 0.5 per unit for this type of development. It's in the zoning ordinance.
So they meet what the, if I kind of a quick question. I just wanted to add on a point, and you took a while to get up your little thing there, but and I was trying to read it too, it was a little small, but that's okay. But my question would be this. We did the intersection at Mechanicsville and Byberry Road, and we put sidewalks in from a 55 and older community up Byberry Road and along Mechanicsville. So you're going to continue that sidewalk. But it looked like to me that sidewalk ended in front of your place where cars pulled into the Giant.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't seem to be able to make a left on the sidewalk, and whether it's your residents, say your residents don't have a car, but they're still going to be enticed to walk to the Giant, you would think, you know what I mean? You know, to get food or snacks or whatever. And is there going to be a path or a sidewalk or some kind of convenient way for people from the 55 and older community on Byberry to walk past there and get to the Giant safely, and also for your residents to get to the Giant safely?
So our plan is to extend that sidewalk down to Street Road from.
Okay, so it wasn't on that picture,
Okay,
as far as I can see.
It is on the plan, though.
It's on a plan, it wasn't on the picture.
It's not in the rendered, the extension of the sidewalk's not on the rendered plan, something we obviously have to work with PennDOT to construct it, but it has been.
No, but I'm talking about, like, when you go up Mechanicsville Road, it looked like it was on the front, but then it has to be along the side going up the driveway to the Giant, so PennDOT would be off.
No, we had not shown that, no.
What, are you going to do it?
Ron, is that on the engineer's plan?
Not going up the side, no.
So we were
Yeah, well, then, anybody walking from the 55 and older, or someone from that development that wants it, you're already restricting the amount of cars these people can have, you know, so some people are going to want to walk. So, no, it wouldn't take, isn't that an entrance on the front? Oh, it is? So, does the sidewalk continue up the?
All the way out to Street Road.
Oh, it does, okay, so that's not the entrance to the shopping center. So the next driveway, and then they could walk from there, they could continue from that sidewalk, that would be there, okay. Okay, so there'll be sidewalks all along Street Road, continuing from the new intersection from Byberry? Right, all the way to Street Road, okay. All right, okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this project?
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue, again. My question is, there was a delineation for wetlands on this? Has there been a perk test to say how this water flow is going to work on here with their system? Has there been a perk test?
In my recollection, there was no wetland.
Oh, I thought there was a delineation for wetlands.
There was a comment that we needed a wetland certification put on the plan, certifying that there are no wetlands. I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, too.
Hi, I'm Nancy Sarr, SARR, 43 Regents Court, from Regents Glen. Some of the questions that I had, you folks proposed, and of course, it deals with traffic and it deals with parking, but I understand on a previous application that somewhere in the information it was stated that they did a one-day traffic study. And my question is, why would they only do a one-day traffic study, not do multiple days at different times of the year? Because I don't have to tell you folks that you all know that that's a very busy intersection. We're adding more housing with more seniors, and then we have the bank across Street Road, that whole corridor from Humeville to Knights to Mechanicsville is a nightmare. And as much as I would love to see housing for veterans, I think we all do, and we thank them for their service, the traffic there is going to be horrendous. That's my first point. The parking spaces, I have another question about, because, like you mentioned, 21 parking spaces? 22 parking spaces. And if people have visitors coming, the workers that are there, if they have some kind of special program, where are they going to park? And if they can't find parking, are they going to go back out and go to the Giant? And how long is the Giant going to put up with extra cars parking there? And then they're going to say, oh, let me turn right and go around to Byberry, and gee, here's a development, quiet street, let's park our car there. So we don't want extra traffic in our development as much as we would like to have the veterans have a nice place to live. It's going to create more traffic in our development as well. We did understand that there's going to be a fence added, and we appreciate that if this is to go, but our preference is that you reconsider that. Stormwater management, I understand that Regents Glen was built on wetlands, and we don't want more water coming from the back in the property. I know they have a plan in sight on record, but we're concerned about that into that development. And I guess the one other thing was the application that I saw when I was at the last planning meeting. There was some incorrect information on there as far as the number of units, the number of stories, number of parking spaces. If you have a current application, I just want to make sure that that information is correct on there, because if they're applying to do something, then it should be correct and in writing and in your possession. And I think that is it. Thank you for the time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to come forward? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Bill, you said in the beginning that the building size was changed and those things were changed. Can you reiterate that, please?
Yeah, in fact, the traffic study that was referenced concluded that this project would have no adverse impact. That study was done on the assumption that there were 69 units. That was under the original plan. So it was a much more intense use, and it still had no traffic impact on the surrounding traffic patterns. With regard to the parking spaces, I understand your concerns. You look at it and you think like, boy, that doesn't look like a lot of parking. But our client's experience is that it works, and the ordinance that you have suggests that it works. So the parking seems to work for this type of facility. It's not a large families. You don't have a lot of kids, where your 18-year-old kids have cars. You're not going to have multiple cars per family. In fact, you're going to have less than one car per unit. So the parking does work, and it's appropriate for this size development. You don't want to add impervious surface if you don't need to, and that's what we're trying to avoid, is adding unnecessary impervious surface.
Mr. Giddens did say that you meet the parking criteria. Is there a stipulation in here that they cannot have children in any of these units?
Well, it's age restricted.
I understand, but there's age restricted all over the township that end up with their kids and their grandkids living with them, so.
So all of the residents of this building need to be 62 and over. To be on a lease, you need to be 62 and over. Grandkids can come visit, but they cannot stay, and we'll have management that's looking, is looking after that.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Okay, my question is this. You were going to do 60 what units?
There was one plan for 69 units, 4 stories and
4 stories,
69
and now
units.
you reduced it. When you had 4 stories, were you arguing, because apparently that wasn't approved by zoning, they wouldn't give you a variance for that amount.
We would have needed a variance for
On the
that.
parking? But my point is this, when you were planning on 69 units, you still had the same amount of parking for 69 units?
No, there would have been more parking, a different stormwater management plan, because there's more impervious surface then. And frankly, I don't know, I haven't seen that plan, so I don't
Parking
know.
was compliant under that, because we were at 50%.
Because you were going 4 stories, so the building would have been laid out differently.
The building would have laid out, because I was just taking off a story, why don't you just have some of the parking that you were going to have with the 69 building on this building? Because it's a totally different building and you can't fit it. You know what I mean? Like, you took off 1 story. Why'd you take off 10 parking spots?
Just because they were no longer needed, and you don't want, generally in design, you don't want to have unnecessary parking. And if our experience had suggested that your ordinance was out of whack and that we should actually, as a practical matter, just to make this function, have more parking, we would have done it, because we want this to, obviously the client wants this to work. So, but their experience is consistent with your ordinance, and that is that this is the right amount of parking, about 1/2 per unit.
Okay, I just wanted to see whether you were just saying
Yeah,
20.
no,
We tried for 69 with 22 spots, that would have been even more out of whack.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Is there any way you could get any kind of agreement with the adjacent place that you could park there for at least guests or events? Have you considered trying to do that?
Get an agreement with
whoever owns the Giant, that you could, for events, or it's possible you could make an attempt to even do that?
That's something that we would.
People are going to do it anyway.
I mean, we don't know right now whether it's needed, but it's certainly something we would commit to talking to them about if it became necessary, if parking became an issue. There is precedent for doing that kind of thing in
I mean,
other
at least visitors
places.
would do that, I would think, are going to do it. I just don't want you having a problem where you could work it out with them.
Is this a different footprint for the 40 units versus the 69 units?
Yes.
It is, okay. So it's covering more area. It's a bigger, wider building, if you would.
And there was also a preference to not have parking directly up on Mechanicsville Road and to pull it back from the road. And so that's why you see a combination of planning and also stormwater management, keeping that area open well, we don't have it up, but in the front of the site.
Okay. And I can understand that. You don't want to right adjacent where people could get involved with Mechanicsville Road somehow.
If you found a need to down the road, once this is constructed and maybe you find yourself having problems with parking, would you consider expanding the parking area on the property?
We would
If it's necessary, I mean, is that?
I mean, I think we would probably first seek parking accommodations next door, but if it continued to be an issue, we would consider it.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Another guy wants.
We closed public portion.
He was standing there, I think.
I closed public portion before they came up and spoke, but come forward, we'll let you speak.
You closed it.
My name is Andy Krasson, 3125 Mechanicsville Road. I'll be the neighbors of this. I find it hard to believe that there will ever be enough parking there. I remember when I used to visit my brother at a nursing home, they didn't have enough parking, and people ended up having to park on the street or block other cars, and so there's no way there's enough parking there. The visitors there, and there simply won't be enough parking spots. And also, I'm concerned about the water runoff, because ever since they built the other development behind me, I've been having floods in my basement and all through my yard, and the water used to go straight back because they were wetlands. Now it comes across my property ever since they built back there, so I got constant flooding now from that. So, how are they going to stop the flooding? Because now they're going to be building, on the side of me now, and now where's the water going to run off to?
Well, no water should run off the property onto your property.
I've been getting floods, never had floods before in my property.
Yeah, but that's a separate issue, the buildings behind you. if you're saying
Right,
that's what
but now they're
caused it.
building, I got property behind me. Now I
But
have
building
property
next to
inside.
you, well, it shouldn't have affected you.
Also, I'm concerned about the veteran safety too, because there have been police in my backyard chasing criminals, sometimes late at night with flashlights in my backyard. How about that with the, you know, their safety?
Okay, well.
I'm concerned about that too. And the traffic on the street is very, very bad. It gets congested, backed up all the time. You have the racetrack traffic. It's not a very good spot to put a veterans house. They should have a nice, calm, you know, quiet neighborhood. That's a very, my neighborhood is getting very, very crowded. And there's more, you know, bad people coming in the neighborhood.
Okay.
You know, I'm worried about that too. And, you know, there's not gonna be enough parking spots. And Giant is always crowded too. Their parking is not gonna be able to park at Giant because they're always backed up too in Giant. I actually walk the Giant because I can't park my truck there. Because it's always, you know, it's always crowded out. That's what I'm worried. I'm worried about stuff like that too.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Pisa, do you have anything to add?
Happy to see the efforts being made to help our veterans. But as far as the plan goes, I think everything's been covered. The applicant has indicated that as far as all of the review letters are concerned, the township, the fire marshal, the township traffic engineer, those are all will comply items. So those will be will comply to the satisfaction of the township engineer and the township traffic engineer.
Thank you, sir. If there's no other questions from the board, then a motion would be in order.
I'll put a motion reluctantly on the floor, positively because it's a wonderful program. I wish you would look at the parking a little bit more beyond what even we are asking you to do, which is in our ordinance, and listen to what has been set up at this DS today, because I don't think anyone thinks there's enough parking there, and I know that you're saying from your experience it is, but from my experience with other endeavors and other properties, it's not. I mean, just if you look at different activities, other than the apartments, you see people, I guarantee you they'll be parking on that grass when they have an activity. And wherever they can, and on the side of the street, on Mechanicsville, and such. So maybe you should revisit that just on your own and possibly add some additional parking to it. But my motion is going to be made in favor of the preliminary and final land development for the BSV Housing LP, and that's 3063 and 3095 Mechanicsville Road, and that's for two tax map parcels of 02-037-036, as well as 02-037-063-001. Basically, everything that was presented this evening, the applicant is going to comply with anything that the information that we put forward regarding the memorandum from Harold W. Gans dated September 6, 2018, regarding the zoning, regarding the discussion, also Chapter D, Chapter Land 201, Land Development. The applicant will comply with everything that's being presented. The stormwater management is also in compliance, miscellaneous and subdivision. All the letters, including the fire department, that you are in compliance with. The traffic planning and design, it's my opinion, I'm going to put in a motion that we give you a waiver on the impact fee because of the nature of the project itself, being adding to the welfare of the township. And so that I would ask that would be waived in the motion. And that would be my motion.
Do we have a second on the motion?
No, there's a motion on the floor.
No, we're past that.
I'll second.
We have a second on the motion.
I already seconded it, but that's okay. You can second it.
I just said we have a second on the motion. I didn't say who.
Okay.
Bite my head off, Joe.
Okay.
Mr. Player?
Any questions on the motion? Yes, sir.
Yes, I would ask that we also add to that a deed of consolidation.
Oh, thank you.
There are
That's
two
right. There
lots
are two
being
lots.
consolidated.
Exactly, I knew that too. There are two lots, and I mentioned them, and they asked that they would be consolidated and approved by, recorded accordingly.
Whichever one of you are going to get them
No,
second.
I give the second to Jesse.
Okay,
since
do you want to amend your second,
He's a
Jesse?
veteran, so I'll let him have it. I'll let him have a
I'll
second.
add one additional comment.
All right, well, let's, I'm going to ask for questions now, and then you can.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Who's the second?
The second is Jesse Sloan. And he amended his second to match Ed's thing. Any questions on the motion?
I just want to add one thing, Mr. President, to make sure that I was just informed that I mentioned the one tax map parcel, and it should be 063, where Ed said I
Amend your
reversed
second,
the number.
Mr. Sloan, thank you.
I'll amend my second.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
I'm
Sloan, you had a
just
question or comment?
Can we also amend the motion to have them meet, work with the Bensalem Veterans Advisory Board as part of the continuation of this project?
They've already agreed to that, but that's fine if you want it in the motion, Ed, if you want to put it in, Ed.
I'm fine putting in the motion. I'm sure they'll do it, and I know our team will do it, but I put that in the motion.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then I'll amend my second to match.
Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the meeting- so how can you-
All right.
Try to give the benefit. Yeah, no, the parking's not great though.
Number 9 on the agenda, planning module for Broken Goblet. Mr. Pizzo?
Yes, as I indicated at the outset of the meeting, Mr. Polari, paperwork, for whatever reason, has not been submitted to the township by the applicant, and therefore, if council is of a mind, we can table it forward to your next meeting, or we can just simply take it off the agenda until we actually receive it.
I think they've been doing too much drinking.
I did speak to them today to find out what's going on, and they're waiting on something working with the DEP and so they can get their sewer connections and stuff. So they are making progress in that, and my understanding is that they will be able to move forward with us as early as the next meeting. So if we can give an extension to the next meeting, I think it would be a good thing to give them the opportunity.
It's a matter that doesn't require any advance, anything to put it on the agenda, so
October 22nd.
if you want to table it forward, that'd be fine.
I'll make the motion that we move it to October 22nd.
I'll second.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 10 on the agenda, consideration of reduced fees for Bensalem Synagogue and Outreach Center located at 2446 Bristol Road, Bensalem, PA. Hope I said that right.
Joe?
Yes.
You have somebody-
For what?
Do you need him to speak on?
Oh, I don't know that we need you to say anything, but if you want, you can, but I don't think you need to. Unless they're not going to approve it, and then you can have that opportunity to speak.
We're good.
Okay, any questions on the reduced permit fee, or?
Yeah, I've got some questions. I've only been up here for about 9-10 months, so I know in the past, in my time, we've approved fee reductions for fire inspections, event fees for like erecting tents and stuff. This seems different. I'm not sure if there's a precedent. I was hoping Mr. Pizzo or other members of council could enlighten me on, have we previously approved reduction in construction permit fees, such as this?
Building permit.
These are the things that I've been questioning for years, that,
Well,
I think that if we're not covering our costs and things, they're things we've talked about. We've always done for special events. I don't know that we've done for total building projects and so forth.
And that's why I wanted to bring up the question now.
Well, the answer that I can give is that the form obviously provides for these sorts of waivers as a line item. So to the extent that the township has been utilizing this form for these many years, these are fees that are anticipated to be waived. That being said, the answer to your question, is it something we typically do? No, but I think that is in large measure because I don't think you get this kind of a request too often.
No, I agree.
I think that we have done it, personally.
I'm not saying you haven't. I'm saying that the form is set up with the anticipation that it's consistent with the township's policy. If a majority of you and your infinite wisdom for any particular application feel that it's an appropriate action to take. But again, it's not a request that you get very often.
And I'm going to say again that we need to relook at these things and make sure we're covering the cost of our people going out and doing these things. And that's where we run into a problem. That's why I've been talking about this for 10 years now. And we need to find out, are we covering our costs? What does it cost for us to do these? Are we losing money? It's nice to try and help people, but if it's at the detriment of our budget and so forth, it's a problem. Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, if you remember, we were going to come in with our cost and everything on this with Matt Takita.
Yep.
He was working and everything. Unfortunately, Matt left, and we're working on that now. We're trying to get that together to give council what our costs and everything are, so you actually can make, a decision on that. We don't have that yet. I apologize just because of the sense of we didn't have anybody there.
That's fine, and we should probably look at it as they shouldn't even be presenting it to us if it's running into what, covering our costs. I think that should happen before it gets to here. We should do that, so hopefully that'll happen, but.
Yeah, I think going forward, we really need to make that effort. It appears to me that these are permit fees, so I'm not sure to what extent, well, I don't know. Is somebody going out to the site to review this stuff, or they're reviewing plans at this point? That's all it would be.
Well, they go out and when the work's done, they have to go out and inspect and so forth.
Afterwards,
and
right.
what's it? And Joe, Mr. Pizzo, there's a construction tax, a township surcharge. I don't know that we've ever approved here. There are others. I don't know that we've ever approved something giving breaks on taxes and things of that nature.
Taxes.
Again, I feel, at the risk of being repetitive, I know this question comes up. I know that we sort of have the same circular discussion among everyone sitting up here. The townships, as the mayor said, the building and planning department is working to present you with an updated and probably new fee schedule. The township's fee schedule, such as it is, does not provide for a markup for the township to make a profit. So when we are telling you that a building permit fee is $15.55, that reflects what the township's cost is. Whether that fee includes administrative costs that we calculate based on the hourly rate of the employee or employees who are involved in processing that permit, as well as the township's other fixed costs, as well as third-party costs, whatever they might be. There's no, again, we're not Acme, we're not charging 59 cents for a 39-cent can of beans. If it's 59 cents, it's 59 cents. So we're trying to get you a better breakdown of what goes into all of those numbers. but the numbers reflect what the township's numbers are. Mr. Polari, I agree with you as to construction tax and township surcharge of $100 and $12. Again, these kinds of permits are not applications that you routinely see. You routinely see the special events type permit waivers. That's your norm. But the past policy of this board over 20 some odd years is that these are at least fee waivers that can be applied for. So perhaps Mr. Gans, perhaps Mr. Neron could speak more intelligently than I can into what goes into the building permit fee. But all I can tell you is, as the township solicitor, the township building permit fee for this particular project reflects the township's costs for processing and issuing this permit.
Thank you.
And so if you are inclined to reduce it by 50%, you're doing it based on the fact that this is a religious or nonprofit or 501c or philanthropic or whatever the other categories of property owners that you will entertain these kinds of applications from, and 3 or more of you feel that the project is worthy of the application that's the waiver that's being asked for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paizo.
I have one question, Joe, on top of Ron Kansas. Do you know if this is the type of building inspections that are internal still, or is this an outside company who's going to be performing these services?
I'm not sure what I think they're all there. I'm not sure what this project is.
It's an addition, I know what it is.
Yeah, that would be third party.
This is, I'm being told, and perhaps
I know what it is.
the
Gentleman's here.
permit fee applications are for, this is what gets the permits issued. So this isn't for inspections. This is for somebody to review the plans consistent with the building code, with the electrical code, with the plumbing code. And I believe some of those responsibilities are done by township employees and others are done by third parties that the township hires. And Mr. Neron, thankfully, is making his way to the microphone, so.
Hey. Bensalem Engineering Inspector. So currently, there's no Bensalem Township inspectors. Code inspections is your third party that does all your commercial as well as your residential inspections. So they would be the ones doing this. The fee schedule that I'm aware of, I don't know when it was adopted, but I don't know when it has been changed, but I know that it's been there since I've been here, and I don't think it's been changed since. So I would assume that covers all your fees would be for your reviews, your inspections from the township itself.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Mr. Paizo that the fee schedule has always been based on our fee to do the work. It's not inflated in any way. It's based on our costs. So any reduction in that is you cut into the cost for the fee inspection.
And what my question would be is, some of these costs are hard costs and some of them are soft costs. You know what I mean? So some of them might take into consideration that we're paying health care or pension for the person who's doing this job. You know what I mean? I know it's not a profit, but I just don't know. It's employee, right? So I just don't know. I know we're not supposed to make money, but you know, it's up to you. To me, we've done it in the past, and some of these taxes, I agree, I don't know that can be reduced, but for the building fees for some of these outside groups that are just say they're nonprofit, but you know, whether it's St. Ephraim's or the synagogue or Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, I think that you know these are established, well-established nonprofits in our community. No,
Yeah,
but
I agree with you.
Some of these companies, some of these places that come and say they have a car show and they're from some other area and they have a car show at the Ramada and they want half off to run their car show because it's in our township.
But you're doing it for other 501c3s and other.
Yeah.
You can't tell one you'll do it, the other one you don't. That's discrimination. So.
Well, I think for local established, for local churches and nonprofits, I'm willing to do it. I don't
Here's our
care.
options. We can vote on this, we can postpone it, so it's up to you as the
No,
board to decide.
I think I'm trying to just understand. It sounds like these are the fees associated with the work that our township employees are going to be doing anyway. So they're
Yeah.
coming to work, they're doing their job, they're getting paid anyway. So this would be to offset those township costs, it sounds like, of them doing their job on a normal basis.
I agree. I think if we're in the business of being in the business for making money, then we should be in some other business. But we're in the business of providing services to our residents of Bensalem. And we have an organization before us this evening that is presenting services to our community. We should also provide services to them. So I'm in agreement that
I'm
even if
fine with it too. I mean, I don't want to balance the budget on the backs of local churches and schools and synagogues, because to save $12.50, to me, it's.
That's my position. At one point, we used to make this 100% reduction. And then we kept on-
I'm willing.
If somebody would like to.
I made a motion before, it wasn't seconded on another one, but I'll make a motion that we give a 50%. Joe, should we do the tax or avoid doing the tax? That seems a little, what is a tax? We can't give 50% on the tax.
And the township surcharge, I don't
Yeah, okay.
understand those two.
I would make a motion that besides the construction tax and the township surcharge, besides those two fees, the application fee, the building permit fee, the electrical permit fee, and the plumbing fee, that we give a 50% reduction to the Bensalem Synagogue and Outreach Center for those fees. I make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second on the motion, Ed Kisselback. Any questions on the motion?
I just want to clarify that the total
I'm sorry.
calculated at that point that they would be due would be revised to $1,067.
Yeah, you would have to add back in
another
$56.
$56. Yep.
Yes.
So that's it. That's all I had.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0.
Great presentation.
Number 11 on the agenda, public comment. Is there anyone who would like to come forward with public comment? Sir?
Again, Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue. Not yesterday, but the Monday before that, the tour of honors for the Second World War and Korean veterans went down to Washington. I was happy to see that everybody had a good time when they came back from that tour. My only disgruntled thing to the whole thing was that none of the politicians showed up that are running for election. I know you had an excuse. I know you and Joe Zaffron had an excuse too.
You're right, though, I'm not a politician.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're not a politician. My other comment is the Fall Festival. I think we had a great Fall Festival. The weather was not perfect, but the mayor came through again. And it looks like everybody had a good time, and the fireworks and the concerts were just amazing, and thank you for giving me my $300. The Parks Casino, or whatever you call it, the home grant. Yeah, thank you again.
You said you're going to spend it at the Parks Casino? Is that what you said?
No, I do not. I've only been in there once, and that was to find my daughter.
Make an improvement to your residence.
Thanks, Alan.
Hi, my name's Linda Snyder, and I live at 1048 Orchid Avenue. And I too want to thank you for the $300. I usually send you a thank you card, Mayor. I'll just say it in person, thank you, and thank you to everyone at usually oil the first of the season. But why I'm here tonight is because of an ongoing thing with my next door neighbor. And I want to tell you that even though the property was cleaned, it's ready to be cleaned again. And I mean, I really don't know, it's none of my business, I guess, if they have paid for their permits yet, if they have obtained their permits yet. But I do, as far as I know, the property has been condemned and there should be no one living there. I will tell you, there is someone 24/7. There are people there, and lately the children have been there. And I go to bed early. I'm usually in bed by 9:30, and I don't really want to stay up all the time and call the police and disrupt my life and pull them off of something that's, much more important. But now that the season is changing and the burning has begun, I don't know if my next move is to go to the fire marshal or what, because it's a death trap if they're going to be burning there. And our properties are fairly close. We have a joining fence, which I put up. It's a little scary at night. A generator runs 24/7. There is no running water. There is no electric. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's still, and I realize we cannot make other human beings do things. You just
Well, if they can.
can't. You can
But
try.
if it's condemned, I don't know why people are living in it.
And this is a 2-year, ongoing 2 years.
Wait, Linda, honest, I
I'm
would
almost
come
embarrassed
down,
to bring it
I
up
would come
again,
down
'cause I know.
myself. I am so frustrated. The court
understand.
system, the whole darn thing.
I understand.
This shouldn't exist. This shouldn't exist. We already cleaned the damn place up. And when I tell you clean up, you wouldn't imagine what was down there. Now it's there. I haven't come down it lately. Is it back again?
It's not as full as it was, but it's building from the day that you left. The trash has been building.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And we send the police down. It's in the court system. It's
I'm
in.
not aware of the property. I know building planning is. What I can do tomorrow morning is notify interim director that sent somebody else down there again.
I can't hear you. Get to the
Joe or
microphone.
Lauren, do you know what the court decided?
Well, they did pay the taxes.
Do we know what the court decided?
I know that we are, obviously, since this all was last brought in, we went out, gave them notice that we were going to go out, clean the property. We did. The property's been liened. We have refiled with the court to get an order giving the police direction to forcibly remove them from the property. I'm not sure what the status of that is. It is in the court system.
Has the property been condemned?
Not condemned from the sense that we've condemned it to take title to it. It's condemned in the sense that it has been declared uninhabitable.
People are inhabiting it. So that should give us the ability to go in and remove them, correct?
There is a contempt hearing scheduled in 2 weeks. We were just texted.
Thank
So,
you.
and we would, I would expect that we will be reaching out to you as our star witness.
It's unbelievable that can happen. It's unbelievable. Our police can't go down and break in and get people out.
Well, honestly, I have not called the police since September because they either don't get out of their car, when the people don't answer the door, they just have to drive away.
Well, part of what the police have been doing was creating a record of people being present in the property. So they would go, again, and the order that was in place, as you're well aware, allowed for them to be on the property to make repairs to it during daylight hours. So in July, we're talking until 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever time it gets to the point where it's too dark to work again. Now that we're getting into that time of the year, it's a little easier to establish. But again, we have been, as part of the preparation for this contempt hearing, police have been going out and making a record that they have been providing to building and planning and to us as to verifying that they went out on such and such a date and knocked on the door, heard people rustling about, no one answered. So we've got that record as well. We'll have photographs and we'll have the testimony of the neighbors.
Hopefully the court will do the right thing because nobody's quality of life should be ruined like that, and nobody's kids should be put in a position where something can happen if there's a fire from something that shouldn't be there. It's a shame, but thank you, Mayor, for staying on top of it. I wish we had a better response, but I know you're doing everything you can, and we got your back. So I understand.
I'll call the police now. It is getting darker early. I will try again.
Absolutely, but the officer said until 10 o'clock.
the officers told us something, yeah, they wouldn't come down till 10 o'clock.
Because that's what's supposed
That's, I think that may be on the paper that's hung on the door, that there's a specific time.
That's fine. If it's 10 o'clock, they're still not supposed to be there. So whatever time, just so that we have that record.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to come forward?
Hello, my name is Joyce Albritton. This is Bruce Graves. We're both volunteer district leaders for the Humane Society of the United States, and we're here to initiate the process to propose a ordinance which would ban the sale of commercially raised dogs, cats, and bunnies. The background is both states of California and Maryland have adopted this statewide. There's 280 localities that have also adopted these laws. It would force pet stores just to sell dogs from shelters and rescues. Presently, it's just a preventative action because there are no pet stores in Bucks County that even sell dogs from puppy mills. They are already all from shelters or rescues. But it's just to get the momentum going for the state so we can, eventually get a statewide regulation.
Joe or Lauren, can you guys take a look at this and some research, see what ordinances are out there and see if it's something that, that works for us? I know we have one for the city of Philadelphia, but let's look and see what else is out there and see if we can do stuff.
No, that's fine. If we could have a copy of what's been handed up. Lauren actually has a meeting scheduled tomorrow with the Township Animal Control Officer, so we'll see what we can do. I don't know that there's much that you can do in the way of adopting an ordinance, but if it's we can identify some issues with the Animal Control Officer, and perhaps in the future a resolution or something asking the state legislature or the Congress to take some actions. We can certainly do that.
And definitely, my name is Bruce Graves, 258 Linden Court. In addition to being a district leader for HSUS, I'm also a forensic veterinary technician at the Pennsylvania SPCA. And I deal with all animals that come in through cruelty through our organization. And puppy mills are large-scale breeding commercial institutions is part of the cruelty that we see. And this is an effort where that HSUS, the Pennsylvania statute, is trying to get into the books to close down and stop the puppy mill operations. Puppy mills is the reason why it's so bad is because those that operate those businesses prioritize profit over the welfare of the animals there. And when I would go on scene, which is part of my responsibility to triage animals there, I would see animals living in deplorable conditions, suffering from emaciation, liver shunts, and other debilitating diseases that require a lot of extensive medical care. And for consumers and those Bensalem residents that want to get a puppy, if they was to source an animal from a puppy mill, they may potentially be receiving an animal that either grew up in a debilitating condition or maybe suffering from a medical condition that the future owners are not aware of. By enacting this ordinance, we know we are ensuring that those that are not following animal welfare laws and rules and morals are not, contributing and putting their profit out, their products out, but ensure that animals that are within shelters and nonprofit rescues, if they want to, work with pet stores in our area, they can definitely do that. And that way, owners that want to adopt an animal from a pet store through an affiliated rescue know that they're getting a pet and a patient that has been checked over by a veterinarian, that have received vaccinations, that is spayed or neutered, and come from a reasonably known background. And definitely, I will supply the additional paperwork so all the members of the council can see what I've handed out. And if you have any additional questions in terms of statistics, information, or facts, or my experience that I can relate to the council, I'm more than happy to to offer those services, and I can hand out my business card.
Give your business card.
I do.
Do you have a contact number?
Leave your
Yes,
business
I
card
have
with
my
Cindy.
business card
Cindy will take
that I
your
can
business
hand out,
cards
and I can give you my
My only quick
contact
question would
information.
be, so you're saying that there's, like, who determines that it's a puppy mill? How do I know it's not like a legitimate, good business person who's raising good dogs, but not rescue dogs, but they're just dogs he breeds?
Which is a
Who
good,
makes that determination? Like, one person's, I know the puppy mills that are horrible, horrific situations, just like horses and stuff.
Yes.
But what if there's like a legitimate guy who's actually doing a good job raising, like making
in the
having
state of
puppies?
Pennsylvania, it's dog law that has control over the kennel licensing,
Right.
and they're the ones that are in charge of going on the property and inspecting the property. But unfortunately, in the state of Pennsylvania, dog law is kind of underfunded and understaffed, and they don't have the resources to
So
go out
what if
in
what
every
if there was a
facility.
good kennel? Would a store be able to sell a dog from a good kennel?
So this ordinance, we're trying to, what we're trying to do, we don't want to discriminate against those that are doing the practice properly. And there are a lot of well-established breeders that, what I like to call is more like the AKA the American Kennel Association
Right.
breeders. They don't often sell their puppies and kittens through pet stores, but large-scale commercial breeders, they do.
Okay, I see. Okay.
They're the ones, they breed, and then they ship their products to various pet stores throughout the state and throughout the country, and that's how they get their business done.
The
we'll look it up.
solicitor's office is going to work with, on looking into what it would take. They'll have your contact information, so if there's any more information needed, either the solicitor's office or, our animal control officer will give you a call to see what's going on. But it's going to take some time for research and make
Yes.
sure that we do what we're allowed to do within our township structure.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
information. Anyone else who would like to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, we're going to close public comment. Other business from supporting personnel, Mr. Gans. Nothing? Mr. Pizzo?
Nothing.
Mr. Mayor?
Just two things. Certainly the veterans thing tonight was something very important to all of us. It's been going on for 10 years, that property. Just want you all to know that. So thank you for doing that. The second thing is Fall Festival was incredible. It turned out, everything went right. I want to thank Dawn Davis who filled in this year. She had to come back and do it because the young lady was out sick for 6 months. She's coming back now, so everything worked out, and I hope everybody had a good time. I think it was except him. He has ash on his car, he said. He got ash on his car from the firework. And I told him he shouldn't have been parked where he was parked. So in case he comes for anything, tell him.
You'll hear from my lawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sloan?
I have two things. Number one, some residents reported that some of the streetlights are not working in Village Green, I think along Betsy Ross Drive. And I think these are the new LED lights that we just put in. So if we can get somebody out to check those out. And then I had an opportunity to talk with some residents along Hansel Drive, which is the road that connects Humeville to Street Road. They're having multiple issues with flooding issues. They've got some backup sewer. So some of it is sewage flooding, some of it is stormwater flooding. I think they've spoken to Bucks County Water Authority to some extent, and some of the houses have been remediated with check valves to prevent sewage backflow. I don't know to what extent we can, as a township, help assist with that, see if we can get that corrected for the other houses in that area. And then there definitely seems to be some stormwater flooding, I believe from the shopping center behind where the AC Moore is. I think stormwater's flooding down into those properties. I think they're at a lower elevation and not passing through, I should say.
Do you have any contact information and addresses where we can have somebody go out and talk
It's
to
the
them?
entire street.
What was the first one you said, Jesse? The street lights were what?
Betsy Ross
Betsy Ross
Drive.
Drive, Village Green.
Village Green.
Yeah.
They'll go out and change them right away.
Yeah, Jim Ryan's good with that.
Yeah,
They get
yeah.
out there.
So, and then the other issue along Hansel Drive, there's been a lot of complaints about drive-through traffic, too fast. Apparently there's a special needs child in that neighborhood. I don't know if there's something that we can look into as far as sending a traffic safety engineer out to do a study, or the traffic safety officer. Maybe a stop sign is warranted around the curve. I've requested before about putting speed bumps or speed humps in some of the residential neighborhoods. I was told by Director Haran that it was the attorneys who said that we can't do it because of a liability issue.
Right.
Is that true, Mr. Pizzo?
There's a lot, well, you can.
Because I thought we already had some of these speed humps in the township in places. I was told Village Green has them, I know in that neighborhood.
Someone drives through, I was told.
But not, I
No,
should
some-
clarify that I'm not looking for a large speed bump. And now they make these wide speed humps that they still are very effective at slowing down traffic
We looked at this.
with much less wear and tear on vehicles and
We looked at this.
road
that-
equipment.
that I was told that even though it's effective for stopping, someone speeds, hits that speed bump, gets in an accident, they can sue us because we put the speed bump.
And
That's
also,
why I think the
when you
speed
plow, you're
humps
gonna,
Yeah, but
are much
doesn't-
better.
They go over a hump and get in an accident. That's what I was told.
and when you plow, you're plowing them
Yeah,
up, now
you're
you have to
plowing-
replace them
plowing too.
and things.
Snow
The-
plows.
the-
Can we look into that as, when was the last time, I've heard these arguments just along with, well, if one neighborhood wants them, then everybody's gonna want
Well,
them.
it's true, but can I make a comment as to all my years on this board? Every time somebody in the neighborhood says, I need speed traps, I need this, 9 out of every 10 of the people that were speeding were the people that live in the neighborhood. So that's where the problem comes in.
It doesn't matter who is speeding. If there's a traffic safety issue and we can do something,
Well,
a
they should-
speed bump or a speed hump is a passive feature, something that automatically forces speeds to be reduced in that area.
My street is,
doesn't,
my street is a drive-through in Eddington. It goes all the way down,
Yep.
out to Unionville Road, because it's faster, or down to, and this is, again, is why when these businesses come up on Street Road, I make comments that the people are using it to go, going through the neighborhood. And
I completely agree.
I have a handicapped stepson, and I have a handicapped daughter, and there's I have a handicapped nephew that lives on Marion Avenue, so it's there. If the residents that live in these areas would pay attention and be careful, would help. But we have to look
Here's a
at,
perfect example. That's a lot of cut-through traffic back in Eddington. Is
I know,
there
but we
something
keep
that we can
okaying
do
things
in this
to go
neighborhood?
out.
Speed bumps don't work because responsible people will respect speed bumps and remind themselves maybe not to speed. But people who don't, or speed, need to get traffic tickets. They need to get tickets for speeding because they'll just they'll speed right in between the speed bumps. They're not going to go, if they're irresponsible people, they need to get ticketed for speeding if there's an area that's a problem. But apparently if they get in an accident, we're going to be sued, and plus the plows will plow them. I don't know how they can know where every speed bump's going to be everywhere.
The problem is here, the street that.
Mr. Pizzo, will you please answer my question before we get into too much discussion?
Yeah, really.
In the interests of everyone's sanity and in the interest of the hour, it is a complex question in terms of what the township can do vis-a-vis using stop signs, using speed bumps, using speed humps, which I'm told are different than speed bumps, permanent in nature, portable in nature, whatever they would be, as a means of a traffic calming. And I'd be happy to discuss all of that with you. Generally speaking, issues of township liability do come into play, and as I've said in the past, I generally tend to try not to tell the world, here's a good reason to sue the township if we were to go out and actually do that and a problem were to arise. But most of the issues that have been identified by the councilmen who've been up here for a while are certainly among the factors that go into the decision-making process. So at the risk of being long-winded and saying I'd rather not be long-winded, I'll talk to you.
Okay. But I understand what you're saying. It's
Yeah, I
important.
understand what
so-
you're saying.
We got to do something. Can
I
we at
understand
least
what you're saying,
send
but
a
it's hard
traffic
to-
safety officer out and do some kind of evaluation of whether, there's an excessive amount of cut-through traffic on this street.
But how do they know what's cut through traffic? I mean, it's a, you know,
It's
like.
an open-ended street. If a car's going in one end, they go out the other.
I thought we
do
ended
these
this
studies in other
conversation a second ago, didn't we? Didn't we just end this conversation?
That shopping center's been
Joe,
very handsome.
we just ended the conversation.
Okay.
Mr. Sloan, do you have anything else?
No.
Mr. Tagmazian?
Just two items. The piece on the boards, can we have that added as discussion for next? I know it's getting late.
The what?
Mr. Paizo was looking into the legalities of the code. Plus, I thought we were going to have the application tonight that was put in. I'd asked for that, but it didn't make the agenda. But yes, we're going to have something ready for the next meeting. It'll be on the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
And then just the second piece is, I also wanted to mention the Fall Festival. I enjoyed myself, and it was a nice event, so thank you to those who put it together, including the fireworks. It was nice. I was there. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Knowles?
Just like to say that the Fall Festival was tremendous again. It was nice to see the community come together, enjoy themselves, and I commend everybody that was involved in pulling it off once again. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Kisselbeck?
Pride Day, Pride Day, Pride Day. Oh, I mean Fall
Fall
Festival. The mayor started it many years ago. I think it was at Snyder School, was it? Snyder? Snyder?
Snyder was the very.
Snyder was the first one.
28
And it still has that feeling of that local township activity, and that's what I love about it. So hopefully we never lose that part of it. And hopefully the Eagles will be good on Thursday night.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you. That's it, Joe.
Flyers, Flyers, Flyers. We're 1-1. I'm a happy camper so far. They're 1-1 right now. They're playing tonight, right? So, I don't know what the score is because I'm sitting here. But our next meeting will be on 10/22/18. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second? Second.
Let's have a discussion on that.